The road to $100,000 gets a little tricky, where tonight, for the virtual Pocono Raceway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to round 12 of the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. We're from Long Pond, Pennsylvania. We're happy to have you with us on RaceSpot TV at the iRacing Esports Network. As always, it's Evan Pasoko, Tim Terry, and Randy Cheneth up at a call with you tonight. Our producer, Hugo Louise, is bringing us to you, and happy that you're with us once more on a Tuesday night. Tim, for those who tuned in a little bit early, they got a look at the crazy finish just 2 weeks ago from Kentucky. First time ever this series required some overtime, and it was Zach Novak to a third win of the year at a green-white-checkered to finish. It sets us up for tonight, third to last race of the regular season.
And this race can be a little bit crazy, as we've seen at Pocono before. Last year was kind of calm, kind of tame. If you remember, there was only one caution here last year, but we've seen some races that have played out into some pit strategy and have played out to some short runs to the end of the race. 7 races here, 7 different winners. So we could see an 8th this evening, but Keegan Leahy looks pretty solid, obviously up at the top of the board when it comes to points, and looking to repeat as a winner here at Pocono.
And admittedly, the fact, Randy, that we've seen so many different winners surprises me just because of how unique this racetrack is. It comes at such a critical time at the championship, because let's take a look at what the points scenario coming into tonight is. So as always, the top 8 drivers on the left-hand side of your screen, those are the drivers currently in a position to fight for a playoff spot. However, with tonight being the third to last race of the regular season, there are some added stakes. All of those drivers below that yellow cut line on the right-hand side of your screen, if the points would end after tonight, those drivers would be eliminated where they sit. So they really need to find themselves some speed, a little bit of luck. Some drivers in front of them need to have some issues if they want to get bumped up. The drivers in blue that are outside of the top 8 still have a fighting chance, but they're going to have to put work in tonight at Pocono, and then of course the next 2 races when we go to Michigan and close up the regular season at Bristol.
Yeah, you're right. Those drivers who are in yellow, they really need to put something together right here, right now. 2 races back before we go to the next segment is not a great place to be. And when we take a look at the rest of the points down all the way through your 40 cars total, there's a number of names down there near the bottom that are nearly eliminated. Those drivers below red, currently 31st on back, they have no opportunity to make the playoffs at this point. So Kane Cook, Ben Nelson, Casey Tucker, Taylor Hurst, Eric Smith, Logan Kress, Brandon Cassell, Nate Lyon, Adam Benefield, and Timmy Hill. No way that they can even make the playoffs. No championship hopes whatsoever. They're basically just racing to either just for fun at this point or to get themselves into the top 20. But a couple notable names down there near that red line at the moment. Nicholas Shelton stands out to me. Ashton Crowder stands out to me. We've seen him have some decent runs. Matt Busa as well. But I think the notable one, currently sitting 27th, 3-time champion and defending series champion Ray Alfala, he is only about 25 points clear of that elimination line.
And more than likely after tonight we'll find his name in the red, because it would be impossible to make up 116 points from being that far back in just 2 weeks. So he really needs to pick up some tonight. And again, that doesn't mean just having a good night in your own right, Tim, but some of the cars in front of you have to have some issues as well. Small change to this race as well compared to what we saw last season. The length of this race returns down to 80 laps, so 20 shorter than what we saw in that race just 1 season ago. Do we expect that to make any change on the strategy tonight? Of course, not the only change. First time racing with this package on this racetrack, going to be an awful lot of fun as well, especially with the race starts on those very wide front straightaway.
Yeah, it all depends where the cautions fall here this evening, Evan. We did have one 80-lap race here back in 2012 when John Adams went to victory lane in the 84 car, but it all depends where the cautions fall. If we have a race like we did last year where the caution only comes once and you have to play pit strategy, it doesn't matter if it's 80 laps or 100 laps. You're still going to have that long run to the end. As you see that schedule going up, Michigan and Bristol, along with Pocono tonight, what a 3 racetracks to lead into the playoffs. This is going to be an exciting run into that playoffs beginning at Darlington.
I think the most exciting part of the schedule is here late. The only reason I would say Michigan's a little bit of a safe bet is because we've already raced at Fontana earlier in the year, so that's a sister track of that are 2-mile D-shaped oval, but all of these tracks unique. Bristol, Darlington, Indy, Charlotte is not the normal oval that we ran earlier. That is the Roval that'll begin the series for the first course Homestead in the winner take all finale. A lot of exciting things still to come with this 2019 campaign. Qualifying at the practice session, though, have drawn to a close, so let's go trackside. Take a look at tonight's Race Spot TV starting grid for race number 12. Pole position for this one belongs to the 62. Keegan Leahy going to bring his G2 Esports Chevy off in first place. Nick Ottinger will join him on the front row. The 47 car starts in second. Zach Novak, Corey Vincent to make up row 2. They'll start in third and fourth position, and Ray Alfala in desperate need of points. He's got a top 5 car.
He starts alongside with another driver that's got to go. It's Nick Shelton in the 79. Next row, Bobby Zielinski and Ryan Luza. Completing your top 10, Michael Conti in the 8 and Brian Schoenberg in the double nickel.
Garrett Lowe's going to find himself in the 11th spot alongside the 66 of Jarl T. And Chris Shearburn will be 13th with Logan Clampett to his right side, and Chris Overland will round out your top 15.
Cody Bias starting in 16th tonight, so he's got a little bit of ways to get up to some of those teammates closer onto the front. Jake Nichols is 17th, and Matt Busa in the number 18th position. Back on row 10, you'll find Jimmy Mullis rolling from 19th. Nathan Lyons halfway home in P20.
Casey Kerwin next up in 20. First, Blake Reynolds to his outside. Casey Tucker, Dylan Duval the next row, and the pony's going to roll from 25th, Brandon Cattell.
Taylor Hurst in 26th with Logan Crest 27th. Ben Nelson in the 28th spot with Kane Cook and Brad Davies rounding out the first 30 cars.
Continuing on through as the field rolls, Christian Challenger is 31st with Michael Guest, Phil Diaz, Eric J. Smith, and Michael Guerrillia will take us to P35.
And completing your field, it's Ashton Crowder, Ryan Lowe, Timmy Hill, Malik Ray, and Adam Benefield starting scratch on this 40-car field. Everybody that's qualified for the series here this evening, ready to go green.
So let's talk a little bit more about this very unique Pocono Raceway. Of course, the big thing is there's only 3 corners, but Randy, it is so much more than that. Every corner uniquely banked and modeled after other racetracks. The turn 1, 14 degrees down here, but the tunnel turn is 9, and it is a wide sweeping flat turn 3 at just 6 degrees. Makes this one of the more difficult racetracks in the series to get a handle on.
Yeah, you're right. The corners here, based off some of the most historic racetracks we have in the United States. Turn 1 based off Trenton, Turn 2 Indianapolis, and Turn 3 set to be like 3 and 4 at Milwaukee. Makes this place difficult to get through for all of these guys. Makes setup difficult and makes for great racing.
It's a 200-mile race tonight for the virtual Pocono Raceway. As always, so happy that you're with us at Race Spot TV and the iRacing Sports Network. As the pace car dives down and in, the field is in the hands of Keegan Leahy. Let's go racing from Pocono. Round number 12 is underway, and it is a long trip, first time through the gears to turn number 1.
And Keegan Leahy hops out to that outside line. Nick Ottinger trying to find a place to run in behind him. Zach Novak trying to poke that nose of the 6 car to the inside. Barely gets there on the Kroger 47. Nick Ottinger, Zach Novak side by side as they head up to corner number 2. And don't count out Corey Vincent. Great qualifying effort for that Renegades Ford on the outside. He'll go for 3rd here.
Yeah, Vincent really gave a big push to Ottinger there. They'll go 2x2 through the tunnel turn. Don't expect to see a lot of this tonight. And the advantage swings back down low. But it actually looked like Novak was going to win out on all of that out of 1. The outside line pushed all the way down into corner 2. And it actually gives that 47 of Ottinger the number 2 spot back. You see Alfala now struggling on the inside to find some grip with the lack of banking in turn 3. It'll be a long drag race, nearly 3,700 feet down to turn 1. Small advantage to Vincent. It's the fight for P4.
And let's see, first time side by side into 1 at speed. Is it going to be the bottom line or the top line that reigns supreme here? Ray looking good on the entry to the corner and actually gets good momentum off. So when the tires are fresh, seems like you can fight down there off of turn 1 on the bottom. But Corey Vincent, a great run off the top towards turn number 2. Not going to quite, I think, get clear. But Zach Novak trying to get underneath Nick Ottinger as well. He's going to get there in through 2. They just about make contact as Nick Ottinger set up the racetrack. And the 6 of Novak trying to get into the 2nd spot.
Novak trying to challenge, but it's a great onboard shot there with Luza. You saw as Alfala and Vincent did battle. The 21 wins down and really tight that time. Luza about pushed up and took out Vincent. They're able to stay off each other, and no sheet metal is scraped away yet. Only 3 laps in to this Pocono 200. If you think it's crazy up front, you can see on that wide shot there down to 1, a lot of side-by-side all the way throughout the field. But up here, it's Luz on the inside of Alfala. He'll take 4th away. It looks like the Wood Brothers Ford tries to cross him over, but it won't happen this time. Luz is up the spot. He's already up 4.
And keep an eye on your battle for the lead. Zach Novak has tracked down Keegan Leahy for the top spot. He hung on the left rear quarter a couple laps of Nick Ottinger's car, and now he is on the back porch of the 62 doing the same thing, or almost did right there, hanging on that left rear quarter of your leader, and now to the inside, trying to make the move, maybe trying to take some of the air off. He'll work to the inside, and Zach Novak will try to take the lead off of corner number 3, has the run, but Keegan Leahy going to fight back on the outside, going to be a drag race down the line. Zach Novak is going to lead this lap, but Keegan Leahy going to have some steam on the outside.
Nick Ottinger is at least 5 miles an hour faster than both of these cars as they really hurt each other's quarter exit speed out of 3 when they were 2x2. Look at the 47 now, only 3 car lengths off this, but it was a impressive defense for the 62 and Leahy being so tight off of 3 to stay in front. Leahy's definitely got the speed early on in this one. Novak, though, has been the charger. He was actually credited with leading the lap that time by for the Performance Plus Motor Oil Ford Mustang. We'll see if he can set him up and try again, as the top 5 first time tonight, they're actually single filed out to 3.
And you talk about the fact that we're seeing some different top speeds and Nick Ottinger being quick. That could have been a result of the double draft down the front straightaway, but talking with some of the teams and drivers, there's definitely some different setup philosophies here. Some guys going to jack that rear spoiler up into the air to get as much downforce as they can, probably preserve the tires a little bit better through the run, but you might see some others bringing that rear ride height down towards the floor. That'll increase your top speed and might make your car a little bit more racy and make it easier for you to be able to make passes. So as this race goes on and develops, it's going to be interesting to see to watch which cars look like they have the top end and which cars look like they're trying to preserve the tires with aero, as right now Ryan Luz is trying to set the move up on Ottinger into 2.
You're on his nose. Do they go side by side of the tunnel turn? No, they do not. We mentioned on that first lap, don't expect to see a lot of that side by side. Typically, if somebody gets really good position there, that outside car, Tim might just back off and give it to him. Luz still wasn't close enough. Nick Ottinger decided to challenge, and it was the 53 car that lifted for the time being. He'll try again, though, this time at a quarter 3 on the bumper, peeking to the inside, and they will drag race it by the start-finish line. Looks like Ottinger going to give a little blip of the throttle there, let the 53 go on through. So Luz now up 5 from where he started this race, one of the bigger charges in the front half of the field right now.
And Ryan Luza has had an up-and-down season the last couple of weeks. Obviously, started off the season real strong, but has stumbled the last few races. But this looks like the Ryan Luza that we saw at the very start of this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series season. And now closing in on your top 2, Zach Novak gets a run as the yellow flag is out.
Caution flag here. It may be for the 28 car. There's a lot of smoke, and everybody's going to run in the tunnel turn, but hearing the 28 machine may have been the driver in this one as Garrett Lowe got sent around. The Race Spot TV replay will give a better look at it as there's a side-by-side fight down in contact and turned him. Just a little bit of misnegotiation over the real estate and a big hit there. Nowhere for the Williams eSport entry. A boost, I believe that was to go, and there's the 2 drivers playing a game of chicken awfully early on into the tunnel turn. It did not work, and our first yellow comes at lap 6.
Yeah, a little early to maybe be racing each other that hard, but at the same time, you got to get going at certain points. And Logan, he's not one to lift out of those sort of spots if you're going to give it to him. And I think that 99 was there, so just a little bit of contact there. Sees the 28 go around, and really, I think it's the 5 Abusa who's really the big loser there, and it really wasn't even his fault whatsoever. Just sort of had to run up into it, not much he could do.
So first caution of the night comes awfully early in this one, Tim. Would not be surprised at all and would probably expect everybody to come in for 4 tires and fuel, as seems to be practice. Already looking at drivers with a 1.5 seconds of fall off on that very short run. So you mentioned at the very top that the new race length of this one, 80 laps, 200 miles, would really only be affected by when the caution flag flies. So what does this early yellow do for us in the grand scheme of things?
I think you have to come down pit road. I think you hit the nail on the head with these drivers having as much fall off as they have, and we've seen out of this package where if you get an early caution, it's going to set you up for the long run. I think they come down pit road here. I think they take 4 tires. You might see somebody at the back gamble and try something here, but we've gone so far on this run, working lap 7, and we'll complete lap 7 when we come back across the stripe. I think you have to come down and take 4 tires and see what the car will give you and try to set yourself up if this race does go green to the end, because you never know with this series. We've seen some green flag racing here this season, and could very well see some here with the wide open spaces that Pocono provides, as everybody is coming down into pit road, looking fairly lonely out there for that pace car that stayed out on the racetrack as Keegan Leahy leads the field down.
Yeah, they're all pretty much going to come down to the pit lane, so now's your opportunity to try to knock out a clean pit stop. Don't make any mistakes and don't give up any costly track position. We'll see as race leader Keegan Leahy all the way down to the number 1 stall, but he goes way too deep. The 62 overcooks the number 1 pit stall. The 5 Abusa's off. He's got damage, so I would expect him to come back down pit road. And Keegan Leahy goes for just 2 tires. Everybody else going to complete their full service of 4, and I have to believe that 2-tire call by Leahy influenced Randy with the fact that he missed his pit stall. If he stayed for 4, he would have lost a ton of track position. I think they made a quick call to switch from 4 to 2.
And I don't know if I like the call to go to 2. I think I'd rather drop the track position and just take 4 here. It's a relatively warm racetrack today at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Not that hot of a day at 82 degrees Fahrenheit, but you're going to go out there. Yeah, he's going to be at the head of the field and he'll have clean air, but this is going to be his first idea of what the car is like, probably on 2 tires really early on in the race. The 5 Matt Busa technically scored as the race leader at the moment, but I suspect he's going to come back down pit road for some more repairs. But I'm not sure if I like the call with the sort of drop-off that we're seeing, because as Tim said, we can see a green flag run pop off at any point in this series, and if that happens, I think it's going to be potentially nearly game over for the 62.
There's only one way to find out how it plays through, and that is to wait to see how this restart plays out. Obviously, that's the 62 putting his weight behind wanting the clean air, Tim, because again, he lost about 2 seconds-ish, maybe 2 to 3 seconds by overshooting the box. It wasn't one of those borderline ones where the splitter just got over. He was pretty deep through the pit box and probably would have lost at least a half a dozen positions. Busa does go back in after missing his stall, so he'll go in for service as we expected. But it's pretty much Leahy, the only one on 2. Everybody else with 4 fresh tires as the lights are back out on top of the iRacing pace car and we get set for a restart. I think big key for the 62 here is to hold off, no doubt, the hard-charging Novak and other drivers off the bat, because if he gets into the dirty air early, it's only going to make things a lot worse.
And I think we saw in that first run, the track position is key. You saw your top 2, your top 3 get out, and as long as they weren't changing positions, you had them pulling away from Ryan Lewis and the rest of those guys battling for 4th on back. But as we said, I don't know what the tire situation is going to do here, and I don't know if anybody really knows what the tire situation is going to do, with the exception of potentially Keegan Leahy as he's out front. The clean air means a lot. He talked to him a little bit earlier. We're talking about that clean air track position key with this package. So we'll see what transpires here when we go back to green. But the one thing that I did see, I mentioned Zach Novak trying to set up the passes. He did a great job setting up a couple of passes to try to get up to Keegan Leahy. We'll see what he can do here. Hung on the left rear a couple of times. Nick Ottinger was one of those moves that he made, and was able to get up there and make those power moves. So Zach Novak was on the move early. We'll see what he can do here from position number 3 when we go back to green here.
Another new face inside at the top 5. Michael Conti, surprisingly quiet after starting to P9, but that Filter Time Chevrolet, the entry for Junior Motorsports, will be on the outside of row 2 in 4th. So look for him and Ottinger. Ottinger, the big reason why he was able to hang on for 2nd for as long as he did, a big push he got out of turn 1. We'll see if the rest of the cars in line will help him out once more. Restart going to come 9 laps down, still 71 to go in this Pocono 200. Pace car to dive down and in. Keegan Leahy, your pole sitter, gets to control this restart. It's an early jump for the G2 Esports Chevrolet as we go back to green flag racing.
It's a great jump for Keegan, as right now Zach Novak, he's going to try to hold on to that 4th spot, but Michael Conti wants it as they scream in towards turn 1, nearly 3 wide behind. I think they are 3 wide. I think you see Ray Alfala in that. They get 2 abreast as they work in towards turn 1. Novak going to get the nose chopped off him by the 47 of Ottinger, gets a run up the racetrack, and they're going to be 3 wide for the lead into 2.
It's Novak to the inside. Ottinger going to get pushed by Conti, who's into the outside wall. 3 wide to the tunnel turn. Are they all going to stay in the gas? Oh, it's not going to work. Contact. Ottinger across the nose, and it is a big mess in turn 2. Second caution of the night, and it's a big one.
Leahy gets hit afterwards by the 24 as they go through that wreck, and you can't fault Ottinger on this one. Ottinger was digging on the outside and drove it in as deep as he could. You see it here on the replay, and just didn't have enough room to clear Keegan Leahy and everybody else behind, at least at this point along for the ride. Everybody gets by Ottinger, but there's a little bit of a stack up in front of them as you ride on board here, going down with Jarl Tien, and he tries to clear it, and all the mess happens around him here in front. There's Ray Alfala going down to the wall. That's not going to help the playoff chances for the Spin 21.
And after another good start, Alfala's had good cars, but just not good results recently. To Randy, we had already mentioned even how short into this race that we were, how tricky too wide into the tunnel turn is. That was a game of chicken. 3 cars. I think the 62 Leahy in the middle was actually the most relaxed out of all of them. I think he lifted out of the gas a little bit early, and unfortunately, he pushes up a little bit. The 47's coming down to make the corner, and you just can't fit 3 race cars in that corner. And to the demise of a lot of the other cars in the field, as that happens on the front row right off for the restart. So a lot of the field was still 2x2 behind, bunched up, meaning a lot of the drivers involved in this had nothing to do with where the contact started, but just had nowhere to go to avoid it.
Yeah, you're right. It's about half the field. I'd say majority of that incident, really not much you could do there in the 62 Lee. I think you can still get 3 wide through turn 2 if all drivers respect each other, but Keegan, just the 2 tires, I think was partially the cause of that. He just didn't get turned in whatsoever. The 6 and the 47, the nose is stuck, and Keegan's just didn't, and because of that, the 47 a little bit tap, and see a number of cars get piled up into that one. But I think the notable talking point here, we talked about the situation with that 21 of Ray Alfala, heavy impact on that car, and I think that's going to be nearly the point now that we can talk about the 21 not having any opportunity to maybe even make that top 8, and he's pretty much going to be spending the rest of this season fighting tooth and nail for top 20.
Yeah, we mentioned that the top 20 cutoff is the mark to stay in the series. We'll talk more about that once our playoff drivers are decided and we get to those final couple of weeks of the season, once everybody has found out if they're going to be playoff drivers or not. But Ray was in that yellow, 116 points back. It's going to grow tonight, pretty much the final nail in the coffin for his mathematical chances of trying to still have a shot theoretically at this one, as the drivers that get mathematically eliminated from playoff contention are going to continue to grow and grow as these weeks roll on. When you're talking about only 8 drivers, Tim, of 40 advancing, it's a good chance you're not making it.
Yeah, you really have to be up on the wheel, and you don't want to go into Bristol and be on the outside looking in, because Bristol, you control your own destiny, but obviously at a short track things can happen really, really quickly. You mentioned, Evan, that Michigan might be more of a safe zone per se because we ran Fontana earlier in the year, but do you remember how Fontana was so unpredictable at the start of the year? We could have 2 very unpredictable races leading into that playoff cutoff, so you might want to try to solidify yourself here. Obviously, guys like Ray Alfala not having the best nights with that incident. Keegan Leahy at the top of the board when it comes to points, but still anything can happen. Obviously, he's a little safer than the rest of everybody, but you really don't want to have that momentum swing the other way prior to the playoffs. There's so much that can happen here at Pocono that can affect what happens in 3 weeks' time or 3 races' time when we start that playoff swing in Darlington. But Zach Novak up in front of the field. The 2 drivers that he was racing for the lead hard for are not in the picture right now, so we'll see how this transpires throughout. But Novak showed early that he had a quick car, was able to pick up some quick passes in the little green flag racing that we had. I'm intrigued to see what he can do here when we do get some green flag racing in.
He's looked very sporty. Something tells me that Roush Fedaway Ford has a good chance of trying to run away and establish some pace in this one. As it is most weeks, of course, we're lining up our schedule with what you see with the big boys on the weekend. And, of course, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series goes racing from the real Pocono Raceway this weekend. Let's take a look at what we can expect.
Everything happens so fast.
Nothing ever goes to plan.
Wrecking.
It's a big mental game.
Pressure's on to perform.
It's gonna get crazy.
If you're not tired, you didn't drive hard enough.
So back live at the virtual Pocono Raceway, a racetrack that has seen many different winners over the years in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series. And of course, Zach Novak. You want to talk about hot drivers and cold drivers, Randy? Tim made the point a little bit earlier about how Ryan Lewis has had a little bit of an odd season. He has 3 race wins to this point, all of those coming in the first 5 weeks of the season. He won 3 out of 4 at one point between Vegas, not winning at Fontana, but then doubling up the following 2 weeks at Texas and Richmond. Somebody who's really turned the wicker on is Zach Novak. He was our first winner of the year way back in Daytona, but has been putting it on recently, winning at Kansas, winning at Kentucky, those ever so important intermediate racetracks. That team really seems to have had it dialed in recently.
And I think that's what this season, at least this first stretch of the season, is going to boil down to. It's just going to be the streakiness of it. Because you're right, we had Ryan Luza. He came out and he started absolutely on fire, won a bunch of races, and he basically won 3 races in what felt like 4 weeks. And then he's just been off. It seemed like he took an off week, and he just hasn't quite gotten back in stride. When Luza fell off, that's when Keegan Leahy started picking it up. He won a couple races. He seemed like he might be the dominant one. Then Bobby Zalenski, he came out and he won that race at Sonoma, absolutely dominated it, and he was in position to potentially win another race following that, just wasn't able to really put it together. But Zach Novak is the one who benefited there, and he's now the one that's been so good here at this late stretch of the season. So it's been a very streaky season for a lot of drivers inside of our top 8, and I think we might see this top 8 cutoff play into that of which driver is strong here in these last couple races before the cutoff. It's probably going to decide who's in that top 8 and who isn't.
We've seen this Pocono Raceway part of the calendar almost every year, with the exceptions of 2010 and 2016. Race winners all time, from earliest to most recent, include Steve Sheehan, John Adams, Ray Alfalla, with the trip to victory lane to Michael Conti, Alan Bowes, Cody Bias, and then, of course, most recently, Keegan Leahy, just 1 season ago. Those would be the drivers. For those that are still active in the series, the ones looking to try to become the first multi-time winners at this racetrack. Not many tracks on the calendar still hold that title of never seen a repeat winner. And again, as I mentioned right off at the top, I'm surprised Pocono is a racetrack that doesn't have that, just because it's kind of a unique racetrack, a place that maybe you would expect some drivers to really dial in on, circle on their calendar, like Darlington's and some of those other racetracks that are coming up in a little bit. But the lights are on top of the pace car. Second restart due up after 2 early ones in this Pocono 200. Still being shown with 39 of the 40 cars who started this race on the lead lap. Only Nathan Lyons a lap down, but he's still out there in 40th position. This will come with 14 laps down. Still a long way to go from Long Pond, Pennsylvania. It's an early start for Zach Novak, though. He wants to get out and clear the traffic. Green flag is now back in the air.
Yeah, he's already cleared the traffic and up in front of the field, leaving them battling for position number 2. Vincent takes a look to the inside of Ryan Luza. In behind, there's Jarl T, and with that little bit of rear end damage, battling with Bobby Zalenski. And there's a guy on the outside in the 3rd spot on the outside that likes this racetrack. How about Dylan Duvall starting to make his move in the 42 car? Loves places like this and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Working to the outside of the 17 car of Michael Guest. Roush Fenway having a good run here this evening. Both cars in the top 7.
Talking about Indy, we'll go through turn number 2. Corey Vincent, left side tires on the apron that time, trying to help that car rotate around, but Luza not giving up. He'll stay out there side by side. In second, a little bit of contact behind them. Bobby Zalenski giving a shot to Jarl Tien as Tien jump frogs him and takes over the number 4 spot. But again, the run on the outside of 3. Better place to go. And Luza hangs on to second for a while. Zach Novak cracking open already a half a second advantage for the race lead, as there's a lot of 3 wide back of the pack.
Well, apparently they play jump frog and not leapfrog in Vegas, as single filing out in towards turn 1, except in your mid-pack. 3 abreast right now. I see the 2 of Kane Cook. The 16 of Chris Overland and Michael Garigula, I believe, is in this as well. On the outside is actually Ashton Crowder, who we talked about, who's been needing a little bit of momentum coming in towards the tail end of this season. He makes that move stick on the outside and will pick up a couple of spots and try to work on Taylor Hurst and Eric J. Smith out ahead of him.
Eric J. Smith, one of the bigger movers. A lot of the drivers who avoided that most recent incident really benefiting. Smith started 34th. He's trying to fight for a top 10 position right now as Kerwin clears him off the corner. And now the 20 of Jake Nichols tries to make the bottom work. But again, so difficult to make that low line on the low bank turn 3 a viable option when you need so much momentum for this long straightaway. Speeds that time up to 188 miles an hour into turn 1. It's Hurst on the bumper now with the 51. He'll go to the inside. The fight's for 13th.
As they continue to work around this racetrack, it's hard to keep an eye on one battle. You saw that battle on your screen a little bit earlier for what would be 7th and 8th, and then you see that battle for position 13 that you mentioned with Taylor Hurst. Both those on your screen right now. Ben Nelson takes a spot away and moves one up around Dylan Duval. There's the 46 taking a peek to the inside. That's Jimmy Mullis trying to move up one more in the sim seats ride. He will do so. And in behind, Christian Chalner in the 37. There's a driver, Evan, that finished in the top 3 here last season at Pocono. He's had a couple of good runs as of late, starting to gain some momentum as we head towards the playoffs. Chalner has had a good season so far, looking to crack that playoff bubble. He'll go a long way tonight if he can do so. Dylan Duval falling like a rock, 3 wide. He's in the middle. He loses 2 more.
You're not sure what happened to the 42 Ford. It's almost like he lifted to give the spot to Challenger, and unfortunately he's getting teamed up on, and gotta think something's wrong for the 42 at Dylan Duval. He'll pull over to the left, slow down, and everybody is gonna get by the 42 car. So problems with Duval. It was a top 10 entry. He lost at least 24 spots the last time around.
And we know he's a driver that likes these big 2.5-mile racetracks. His only win in the championship came at Indianapolis, and that 42 car was inside of the top 5, top 10 just a moment ago, and now finds himself buried in this field. Now, I'm watching the 77 of Ashton Crowder still trying to work his way forward. He works around Ken Cook, immediately gets a run on the 20 of Jake Nichols, and goes to work down the front straightaway in towards turn 1 that's modeled after Trenton. Can that 77 make the bottom stick as Eric J. Smith in the 15 is out in front of this group as well, and Ashton Crowder indeed can to move him up. Here's a little fun stat for what we've had thus far. All but one of your cars in the top 13 at the moment, from 6 back to 13, only one of those cars started inside of the top 20. Bulk of the field has really picked up a lot of spots with that early incident.
And at 77, Machina Crowder trying to carry the flag per se for Burton Clearwood Esports. Of course, a lot of damage on his teammate Logan Clampett, who was up in that fight for the race lead, led to the big yellow flag at a turn 2. So the 77 machine carrying the flag and gets the spot up in front of the 20 of Jake Nichols. So 14th position will go to him for the time being. Battle a little bit further towards the front for 6th as here comes Jimmy Mullis. He'll go to the inside of Michael Guest, and they'll go 2x2 into turn 1. 46 drives it in really hard on the inside. It'll work out though for him. He'll slide up in front, complete the pass at a turn 1.
I know we keep talking about the playoffs and everybody that's close to that bubble position, but there's 2 drivers that really need to step up in these next couple of weeks. Jimmy Mullis has a little less pressure on himself than Michael Guest does. Guest really needs to reel off a couple of good finishes here at Michigan and at Bristol, but still within the playoff discussion as we work forward towards that cutoff and the playoffs beginning in 3 races time. But Jimmy Mullis having a great run. Michael Guest up from 32nd up to position at number 7 at this point, and Ben Nelson having a great run as well, up from 28th to 8th, and it might be 7th here soon. Great run at a corner number 3. Tries to set up the 17 down the front straightaway. Won't be able to do so, I don't think, until he at least gets to corner number 1, but Ben Nelson seems to be going the right way and trending towards the front of the field.
Well, the boss man gave him a shout out earlier today on Twitter. Austin Dillon, of course, Team Dillon Esports driver, 33 of Benjamin Nelson, trying to make some moves happen here. He's sandwiched into between some more team cars. Guest in front of him, Challenger behind him, all representing different teams that you'll also see in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series, part of this inaugural class of teams in the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, and trying to stretch this one out a little bit, get some green flag laps underneath that time by past a quarter distance in this Pocono 200. So making some progress. This portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by PEAK Antifreeze, the official antifreeze of the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series.
Going in towards turn 1, the field really starting to single file their way out. fight that was close and I think just swap spots was actually Bobby Zielinski and Corey Vincent. They just switched in towards turn 1. Corey was in that position at the line in third, and Bobby has it as they run down the long pond stretch in towards turn 2. So the 18 is Zielinski starting to move his way forward. Another one of the drivers that's had a good head of steam and good momentum in towards this part of the season. I will say, Evan, talking about what we've been following in the points, we've had a lot of cars taken out, but outside of Key and Leahy, the rest of the cars inside of the top 8 really having good and solid runs at the moment. So for a lot of those drivers who are, say, 9th to 15th, I'd see the realistic ones looking to bump their way in before we go playoff racing in just a few weeks. This is going to be a difficult week for them to potentially overcome with so many in the top 8 having a good run.
And it really falls off sharply. I know we've talked about the drivers in the blue that have a couple of weeks to still fight for a spot. The drivers in yellow need to get something done tonight, and of course those in red already mathematically eliminated. But you know, Jimmy Mullis 9 points, or 6 points I should say, off of the cut line. It's a big jump then to Davies at 30, Chaloner at 33, Michael Guest at 50. Even those drivers who are light years ahead of the drivers who we're talking about maybe being eliminated tonight from contention officially, even that's starting to get touch and go. So you absolutely have to maximize everything for these next 3 weeks. There's a lot of drivers still technically in it, but the field of drivers who can realistically make a run at it is a lot smaller than that.
And I think to Randy's point, when you look at the drivers within the top 8, we saw Garrett Lowe involved in that first caution flag, and even he is rebounded to position number 18 right now. Still a long way to go in this race, but Garrett Lowe has an opportunity to get a few more positions out of this one, and he's that driver that's on the top of, I would say, the drivers that really have to watch themselves. If he has a bad run or continues to fall back, it might be a little bit of a hand around the panic button or over the panic button to make sure that he doesn't fall any deeper in these 3 races. But Garrett Lowe, considering the way the night started off for the 28 car, I think he's doing fairly well right now. But up in front continues to be single file guys picking off their positions. Nobody really putting the pressure on anybody right now. Getting some clean air and getting some clean racing in on lap number 24, starting to see that green flag run come to fruition.
Brad Davies is on to pit road. The number 88 machine had some front-end damage, and obviously it caused some issues with that car. He lost the engine last time by, coasted it down to pit road, so it looks like that entry is done for the night. And maybe the first driver to officially retire from this one, as he is sitting on pit road and was running in 38th at the time, so the damage had already had a big impact on him. But dropping down now to 40th spot, not a good night for Davies, as we start to see now on the first long run of the night who's got what. I'm very impressed by losing to stay with Novak. Novak got such a good jump on the restart, thought he was going to check out. I think he had about a half a second off of the first lap off the restart alone. It has stayed constant at that. In fact, Luza closed it in just a little bit. You can see how far ahead those top 2 are from everybody else. And with the 53, it would not be a surprise to see that driver good on a long run. And we'll continue to watch those intervals. Of course, intervals for all the drivers on track up at the top of your screen, cycling through the running order. Novak now takes a 1/10 of a second back. A good response.
And this is one of these racetracks where if you're Ryan Luza, if you're able to at least sort of stay there, the draft can really help you. This being the big 2.5-mile racetrack, of course, in the past, no restrictor plates ever run here. So you're really losing a lot of the horsepower you typically rely on here. And because of that, your top speed is cut way, way down, nearly 30 miles an hour, as the top speed going in towards turn 2 is only going to be about 175. You typically see closer to about 190, maybe even 192 going into turn 2 with the 800 horsepower engines these guys used to have. So the slipstream is a much bigger aid here, and I think that's partially what's helping that 53 of Luza stay in that second spot at the moment. And remember, we know that Ryan, when he tends to be running strong, he tends to do it on the long run. It's not often we see that 53 car have the fastest car on a short run. It's been a little bit more of a constant thing recently, but when he's going strong, the 53 can go a lot of laps really fast, and with nice tires underneath them on the long green flag runs.
There's a trio of cars a little bit deeper in the pack fighting for 24th on back. The 80 of Brandon Cattell, the 90 of Malik Ray, and the 75 of Phil Diaz doing battle. The 90 car is the one trying to make some noise, and now you'll see as well the 8 machine, Michael Conti, for 22nd, also another battle. So the 20s is really where those two groups of cars are. You can see them both in that shot as they came off of turn 1. Both of those battles going on, some 8 to 9 seconds off of your race leader. leaders. So still a lot going on in the pack, where certainly the draft is keeping a lot of drivers together. Conti really tight on the inside, and kudos to Adam Benefiel for driving it in on the outside and staying up there. He'll defend, but it's a fight for 22nd and 23rd. Benefiel looks pretty clean. That 8 car Conti, same can't be said. A ton of damage on that Chevrolet, and in front of him, the 19 of Casey Tucker is headed to pit road. He has really been struggling the last couple of laps, and his Ford Mustang's down for service.
Yeah, this little battle here is really where the action is happening from, I would say, probably about Kane Cook or so in 13th place all the way back. You see a couple of 2, couple of 3 car packs, and then you see this little freight train working its way around here with Malik Ray taking a little peek to the inside there, trying to pick up a position. But for the most part, everybody in a single file line, passing out, trying to pick up a position as they come. You look at that battle there with Michael Guest inside the top 10, trying to hold off the 46 of Jimmy Mullis, or vice versa, as Guest moves up 1 position on this lap. But for the most part, everybody trying to maybe set themselves up for a green flag run and potentially that first green flag pit stop of the evening. Zach Novak continues to lead and has actually extended the lead the last couple laps to about 9/10, almost a full second on Ryan Luza. So Novak, the last couple laps, has really stepped it up, where Ryan Luz has fallen off the pace a little bit of that first place driver. You see on your screen the 6 of Novak.
And these drivers are now running about 3 seconds slower per lap than their fastest ones of the race. As a swipe to the inside, it comes from Benjamin Nelson. It's a fight for P7. Mullis trying to not lose 2 positions in as many laps. 33 car, though, has got him set up pretty good, and they will single file out by the tunnel turn, gets it done. So Nelson takes that spot away. Mullis will try to get back on him. He'll peek to the inside. He did the same thing with Guest, but could not make it happen. In this 46 car, starting to lose a tad bit of that bite. Look how low the 33 was, all the way down below the yellow line that time in the corner.
And Jimmy Mullis at the moment fighting actually with that car behind a Christian Challoner. Both of these guys 9th and 11th in the points. So very close together. They're really racing to get into that top 8 with one another. So, they're going to want to, Christian's going to want to get around Jimmy and make up points on him, and Jimmy's going to want to stay ahead to prevent that as they roll through turn 1. Challoner seems like he's been stronger the last couple of laps, and he has a run off of turn 1. Can he work the slipstream and get a run in towards turn 2? He's going to peek down to the inside. Can he work the braking zone down here, though, and maintain the momentum down low with the tires starting to go away? He's going to make it look easy and move Christian Challoner, that JTT Dotry number 37, in towards that 8th spot.
So another position swapped out, and you mentioned the playoff implications for Jimmy Mullis. A great opportunity tonight to make something happen. We made the point, Tim, right off at the top, that for those below the cut line, you can't just have good races to make up spots. You also need those drivers in front of you to have some issues, because if you win every race, but the car you're 20 points behind is finishing second, you can't make up enough points over the course of these 3 weeks. Well, Nick Ottinger came into tonight occupying the final playoff spot, only 6 points ahead of Mullis. He was involved in that big accident earlier. Ottinger scored way back with a damaged race car in 34th position. So for Challoner up here, for Jimmy Mullis, both of these drivers really need to take advantage of this race.
And add Michael Guest to an extent to that list as well, because he's at a position where he really needs to get up on the wheel, about 50 points or so back in 3 races. We've seen it happen before. It's a long way back, but we've seen it play out before, where we've had comebacks like this in the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series. But for guys like Ottinger and Davies, as you mentioned, not having the best of races here this evening, and that could affect their playoff chances and their playoff implications going in to these next 2 rounds. But right now, all eyes, when you look at that bubble, are on guys like Challoner and Mullis and Guest as we work forward here in this race. But a guy like Zach Novak, you got to make sure too that you take care of yourself up in front. Get out there, lead some laps, and do what you have to do to make sure that you have a little bit of a cushion in these next couple of weeks. And Novak, so far so good up in front. It's now 1.2 seconds back to Ryan Luza.
And no pressure, but also, Randy, I'd almost rather, if the car I'm chasing down or some of the cars I'm chasing down are going to have issues, I'd almost rather that happen late in the race, because now you're driving this entire race knowing that the guys in front of you are back in the 30s, that the live points are going to put you ahead of them, and you're thinking about that for the next 48 laps. Don't make a mistake. It's weighing on you, so I'm curious if those drivers didn't notice that Ottinger and Davies and some of those other drivers had some issues, if the team's relaying that information to them. Maybe back off a tad bit, play it safe, don't go, for 7th and settle with 8th, whatever it may be at the end, knowing that you're in a good spot, or if they'd prefer to not know and they're kind of keeping them in the dark and just staying focused on going out there and racing.
I feel like I take the freebie if I'm in the sort of situation the likes of Mullis and Davies and Challoner are in, if I get the opportunity. But, I mean, a lot of these drivers outside of the top 8 having good runs here today. Michael Guest, he started deep. He missed a big incident. He currently sits 6th. Christian Challoner, he started deep. He missed a big incident. He currently runs 8th. Jimmy Mullis started deep. He missed a big incident. He currently runs 9th. Casey Kerwin, same story. So many drivers that are near this cutoff point have themselves solid top 10 runs right now. The only problem they have is that the only driver in the top 8 that they're realistically making a lot of points on is Keegan Leahy, as the 8-car Michael Connie is still out there running and showing at least decent pace, as he's actually thinking of going 3 wide in towards turn 1 with some cars in that mid-pack. So unfortunately for a lot of these guys, Evan, they're having good runs, they're getting an opportunity, but it's just the right names haven't fallen out. Only Conti and Leahy really the only 2 drivers to really lose out a bunch. Of course, we saw that 28 go around as well, but only 3 in the top 8 having bad nights. That's not what you want to see. Oh, and Nick Ottinger as well, losing out a bunch, of course. So I think I would have liked to see at least one more of those drivers maybe tangled in that incident. But regardless, you're pushing as hard as you can to at least get a top 5 out of this.
Yeah, for Mullis, I think you almost take that mellow out. You're P9 right now, not to not go for it. We're not even halfway in this race. But again, he was only 6 points behind Ottinger. There's no doubt that he's ahead of them. For Davies and Challoner and Guest, Davies having issues, so drop him back. Challoner and Guest, they were 33 and 50 points back. So if I'm Guest, I'm not going to push it. I'm going to go even harder. But your race leader is down pit road. Zach Novak from the #1 spot is in, Tim. And it's not always that the race leader kicks off a cycle of pit service. But there's the 6 car in at lap 35. First scheduled green flag stops of the night.
And there's your battle. That would be for the lead right now. It's Ryan Lewis, and Ryan's fallen back just a wee bit into the clutches of Bobby Zelensky and Corey Vincent, but nothing too spectacular compared to what we've seen with Zach Novak pulling away. And he was getting loose the last couple laps. The handle was going away on that 6 car, but he was still out ahead and still inching away from Ryan Luza and the rest of the pack. So we'll see how this all plays out when it comes to pit strategy. But it looks like Ryan Luza going to stay out on the racetrack this time and complete lap number 35 on the racing surface. But when you look at some of those drivers that we were talking about around that bubble position, I like the phrase control your own destiny, because you can only do what you can control right now. Randy mentioned it about maybe it would be nice if some of those other drivers maybe had a bad run or maybe got swept up in a wreck, and maybe that would help you a little bit. But at the end of the day, if you control your own destiny, you make sure that you're in the playoffs at the end of the day, and it doesn't really matter what goes on with those other cars. Some of those drivers like Michael Gast and Jimmy Mullis trying to get up there and trying to create their own destiny with 3 races to go before that cutoff.
That's certainly the advantage of having a good start to the season. Playing from ahead is, of course, that the drivers are chasing you, and as long as you put in some good results, it's going to be very difficult for them to try to go up and catch you. Interesting that Luz still staying out on track. Zelensky, Vincent, T, and Gaster, top 5, all still out on track. I thought it was a very early pit stop for Novak, as we see one driver dive in at a quarter number 3. This restart came 20 laps before the pit stop came from Novak, Tim, but that is keeping in mind that we did have a restart, a short run, and then another go at it. So they did indeed go a little bit further than that on the fuel run, but about 20 laps is just shy of what you would need to go one more stop on this race. So I think the rest of these drivers may be trying to get closer to halfway, make it certain so that this green flag stretch is a 2-stop strategy and you got more confidence in your ability to go that far.
And I definitely think there's definitely a fuel window at play here, because he talked about the fact that we have the sort of fall off we've had with the tires, nearly 3 seconds per lap as the race has gone on. You wouldn't be staying out if fuel wasn't a concern for these guys. So those guys that came down, they're pretty much committed to a two-stop strategy here, but they will be quick on the new tires. These guys that are currently out there still running, I think, are trying their hardest to make this into a one-stop any way that they can, and it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. Cutting a pit stop is always important, but at nearly 3 to 4 seconds a lap of cutoff that we're seeing, that's a lot of time to be making up lap on lap around this place. Granted, they're going to have the advantage, the one-stoppers here, Evan. The fact that this is only an 80-lap race, so 4 seconds a lap, that's going to be nearly, to about 2 seconds a lap that we typically see at some of these racetracks. So it sounds like a lot, but with the lap time being so much longer and the race distance in terms of laps being so much shorter, you're not really gaining as much time as it may sound.
And then here, like, the fuel window is probably closer to 32 laps or so, but I don't expect any drivers to be pushing it that far uninterrupted at under green. In fact, Ryan Lucidown going to give up the race lead from lap 34. He'll come down to pit road just shy of the cross flags in this one. It'll make Bobby Zelensky your new race leader. He and Cordy Vincent have been fighting for quite some time, going back and forth, those two, as it was a battle for second. Now it's a battle tentatively for the race lead. Look at that line, though. Vincent about a car length up in one. It allows him to drive it off a little bit more aggressively, and I think he might have had the speed, the challenge, but the 27, not forcing the issue, just flashes the nose and tucks back in line. Through all of this, Jarl Tien cycling his way up to third as well, even with the pretty significant damage he's got on the back of the 66.
And you mentioned the 27 of Corey Vincent trying to make that move, maybe trying to bait him a little bit, just let Bobby Zelensky know that I'm here, and maybe trying to take away that lead and potentially lead a lap or two here. We'll see what they do this time as they come up at a corner number 3, and they will both stay on the racetrack and complete lap 39 on the racing surface here at Pocono Raceway. So next time by, we'll be halfway. There's Michael Guest on your screen coming down onto pit road. Has had a solid top 10 run so far this evening. Let's see if he can get that pit cycle through and potentially have a top 10 or a top 5 run here to get himself a little closer to the playoffs. And Evan, you mentioned it, there's Jarl Tien getting a little bit closer in the picture to these top 2 that are battling for the lead as we get closer to the halfway point this time by.
Funny we talk about the the aero sensitivity of these cars, and at a big racetrack like this, that you got to be in good condition. The draft in the 66 machine got a good bit of damage on the back end there, and he's doing all right. We've seen some cars, especially when you get damage to the front. We mentioned Brad Davies earlier, who lost the engine and was forced to pit road. Davies actually just now brought his car behind the wall, so he is officially the first DNF of the evening. And then drivers like Tien, with the damage is at the back of the race car, not that bad. You can still draft up to the back of cars, and is in fact making this quite a compelling three-way battle for the race lead in the middle of this cycle. Again, the running order's all broken up. We are past halfway. We'll hold on taking a look, though, at your full running order until we get through this cycle to pit stop. So it's a more honest look at the running order. Again, if you remember, the first car to come down into pit was Zach Novak. Well, he would, in theory, assume the race lead after all of this. He's currently scored 29th position, though. That's the way this is all played out. A lot of cars still need to come down to the pit lane and get service. This portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Blue Def Diesel Exhaust Fluid, certified pure #1 diesel exhaust fluid.
You talk about the fact that Novak is down deep in the order a little bit, but he's running quicker laps. He's in the 52s the first handful of laps after coming off of pit road. Last trip around the racetrack with a 54.1, so starting to stabilize already as most of that lead pack continues to stay out. We're expecting probably 32, 33 some odd laps on fuel, so they're getting close to that number, all of these guys that are staying out. But you mentioned that number 88 taking it behind the wall, being the first official DNF. That's going to be, I think, a season killer for him. He came into this race 10th in .7, and after, he's finishing 48th here tonight, I think that pretty much kills any hopes at a top 8 for the 88 of Brad Davies.
He came in with a really, really good shot, too. That's how quickly things can change when you're talking about only 8 drivers actually being able to make it and qualifying in to this. These drivers, although they're stretching this out, Tim, seem to be going an awfully long time again. We went back green at lap 15. There was a yellow. A lot of drivers stayed out, so they have been running a little bit longer than that on fuel, but I mean, we're closing in on what would be 30 laps on that. It seems like the absolute maximum could go for a one stop. You'd have to get at least 33 and 33 even to make it close as they work around lapped traffic, and it'll split these two up as Dylan Duval now finds himself in between Bobby Zalenski and Vincent, and it's actually going to hurt the 27. Here comes T to the inside. It's a fight for second place. The 42 is not part of this.
Yeah, Dylan just had enough steam to clear that 27 of Corey Vincent, and Vincent didn't have enough to get by him, but Jarl Tien got that run, was able to make the move on the 27, and now the 27 tries to take a little peek back to the inside. This is the battle for position number 2. As we mentioned, Dylan Duval not on the same lap as your 3 drivers that are battling for a lead lap position, and that would be the lead as they come off of corner number 3. The 66 takes a peek to the inside of the 42 to try to put him in the rearview mirror and try to catch Bobby Zalenski, who's about 5 lengths ahead of this battle for position at number 2. And as you mentioned, we might see some of these drivers come down for a stop and go or a little splash and go on the fuel if they can't make it the distance. But as we've said before, cautions could play out, and we saw a green-white checker here last week. Anything can happen here, especially with this series, but right now it's looking fairly green, and everybody is minding their P's and Q's right now with Bobby Zalenski leading them down to 2.
I think at this point they are trying to stretch for the one stopper, Randy. You've gone 29-ish laps on this run, and we're looking at 30 inside of that now, 36 laps to go in this race, so you're almost at that point where it hits the equilibrium, and you've gone the distance that you need to go to the end from this point. You split it in half, but surprised that a majority of the field feels confident enough, assuming that this is the strategy play that they're going to race through, that they feel like they can do this. Again, I thought it would be a pretty quick response to Zach Novak. The 6, I did note, was interested that he was the first one to come in. Normally, when you're all on the same strategy, the leader doesn't get the undercut like that, and now it's looking like that's because they're on entirely different strategies this entire time.
Yeah, and I think if you're the 6 of Zach Novak, you have to start getting a little bit worrisome and maybe think that you got this strategy wrong, because typically if it's a close decision, you'll see about a 50-50 split on the field, but with so few cars coming in for the early stop going for 2, and the huge bulk of the field really going for this kind of pit stop strategy, this pit stop cycle, if you're, I think right now, if you're Zach Novak, I even think as well, even if you're Ryan Luza, he came down, I think, a bit too early as well. Came off of pit road on lap number 39. He'd have to do, 41 laps, I think, to get his way to the end. I think that might be a little too far. Those drivers that came down early, they may be somewhat kicking themselves at the moment, because if it goes green, and I'm not sure if they can hold on to this, we're going to have to see how it shakes out. We're going to have to see what the gaps are, as it seems like pit stops are starting to cycle through. We have Nelson, Mullis, and Crowder currently scored your top 3.
The race leader, Zoll, came in, so this begs the question. 45 laps are complete. There are 35 laps to go. Is this enough to make it to the end? I mean, it's awfully tight on the strategy based on the fuel numbers that we've had. And oftentimes when we're talking about tire degradation like we've seen this evening, Tim, especially with this package hasn't given us the fall off that we're used to seeing. But of course, when you got those higher center of the corner speeds and a little bit lower top speeds that at some racetracks it has been like we've seen tonight, oftentimes drivers would sway and stay easy on it and say, I can go this far on fuel, but my tires really can't go that far on fuel, so I'm going to play it safe. Not the case at all tonight, and it does appear that these drivers are going to try to go 35 to the end.
Some of these drivers are going to try to stretch it a little bit further. Jimmy Mullis and Taylor Hurst currently out on the racetrack, first and second. Casey Kerwin in position number 3. As you saw a couple of the drivers come down pit road, led by Ben Nelson, coming down to get service on his race car. So we're up here and we're not on the pit boxes. That's why these drivers are having the strategy calls by their crew chiefs and trying to get it to the front of the field. But it's at the end of the window if you come down now to get fuel and tires, and you might want to come down and get a splash and go and maybe 2 tires at the end. But that's why the strategists are on the pit box down there for these teams and not up here as we see this all play out in front of us. There's Jimmy Mullis on your screen. He is your leader in the Sim Seats ride, coming out of corner number 3. This time, does he decide to come down onto pit road to get service? Indeed he will, and it looks like Taylor Hurst in the JDR Graphics car will follow him along.
So now Casey Kerwin will cycle through to the race lead, and to the point that Tim mentioned, Randy, about us not being the ones on the box making the call. If you're, of course, unfamiliar with this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series, a lot of these drivers do have people in there from their team with them on the box, and spotters and crew chiefs all strategizing on a radio channel together. That's also the reason why they don't tell us definitively what their strategy is going to be, because in a race like this where a majority of the field is going to go for one call, but there's a chance another could work in, they don't want other drivers finding out what their call is going to be, so that's why all the teams pretty tight-lipped about the strategy.
Yeah, and they're always going to do so, aren't they? It's going to be the play that they make. And I'm just having to take a look at the replay, actually, to see if we had any cars come down and actually fill up on the extra sort of lap. You get sort of a second opportunity to come down pit road, and a handful of cars took it. I don't see any of them really staying out too late, though. Ryan Lowe was one of them. Another one was actually Timmy Hill, but Timmy's not really far enough up the order to really benefit from this whatsoever. But the 14 of Casey Kerwin, he comes down pit road along with everyone else who's getting seemingly amazing gas mileage. The 80, I could tell, though, he was one in that group that came down at the latest possible point at the last yellow. He got an extra lap because of it. The 7 of Ryan Lowe as well, and because of that, he's out there leading.
And that could be huge for those drivers when we're talking about the razor-thin margin that we sit at. Of course, when all of this cycles through, Novak will become your race leader once more. But we do believe that he and Luza and those other cars who made that early pit stop are not going to be able to go the distance, some nearly 45 laps to the end of this race. For a lot of them, seems like that would be too far when you're talking about those trying to go 35, needing to save a little bit. And I suppose turn 3 is an opportunity, Tim. Even turn 2, maybe you lift out of the gas instead of dragging the brake a little bit more. You can save some fuel, and I assume most of the drivers are going to have to need at least a little bit saved up.
Yeah, they're going to need a little bit to go the distance, and of course with these races, long green flag runs, you're going to save a little bit throughout, but I think if you're those guys, you might want to bank on a caution prior to your pit stop, and it'll cycle everybody through, and it might save you a little bit compared to where the strategy is. But again, that's why they have the strategists and those race crew chiefs on the box and making all those calls and crunching all those numbers. Chris Overland came down into pit road. That time by in the 16 was scored in the top 5 the last time, and it should hand the lead over to Zach Novak here with the pit strategy and the pit cycle completed. Novak and Luza will go back to the top of the board, and Novak now has a 2-second lead on the rest of the field.
So it took an extra 10 laps for all of it to cycle through, but now at lap 50, everybody has come down for at least one stop of service. Some should be go to the end. Others may not be able to go the distance. So let's take a look now at our iRacing Midway race break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally sanctioned series by the likes of NASCAR and many more. At lap number 51, Zach Novak is back to the top of the board. He was the first car in. He's back to the race lead, 1.8 seconds over top of Ryan Luza, who scored in second. Michael Guest to third. Bobby Zelensky is fourth, and Michael Guerrilla rounds out your top 5. These are the cars that pitted before lap 40. Corey Vincent runs in 6th position. Jarl Teen right there in 7th. Those are the drivers to look at. They pushed it to 45. 6th on back may be able to go all the way. So it'll include Blake Reynolds in the number 8 position. Christian Challenger 9th, and Ashton Crowder, a top 10 car again.
Yeah, great to see Ashton Crowder up there in the top 10. Ben Nelson right outside in position number 11. Taylor Hurst in 12th. Jimmy Mullis in 13th. Malik Gray scored in 14th the last time by, and Adam Benefiel in 15th. Casey Kerwin, Brian Schoenberg's got that double nickel up to 17th. Garrett Lowe in 18th. 19th is Jake Nichols, and completing your top 20 is Phil Diaz, but Diaz is on the move the last couple laps.
The Michael Conti started this race near the front of the field and was inside of the top 5. He currently runs 21st. With damage. Kane Cook is in 22nd with Eric J. Smith in 23rd. Brandon Cantell in 24th with Casey Tucker 25th. Chris Shearburn, Ryan Lowe, Ray Alfala, Chris Overland, and Keegan Leahy. They will round out your top 30.
At first list of drivers we looked at, there was a lot of green. You can see all the red arrows on the left-hand side of your screen. Rough Knights. Cody Bias in 31st position. Logan Clampett scored in 32nd with Nicholas Shelton 33rd. Dylan Duval 34th, and he'll now drop down to 35th as he makes another trip to pit road. So DeGottinger will bump up a spot. So will Timmy Hill. Those are the cars still scored on the lead lap. Matt Busa is 1 lap down in 38th position. Nathan Lyon also there with him at 39th. And then, as mentioned, the only driver behind the wall this evening is Brad Davies, the 88, is in the garage in P40. That's a look top to bottom at your iRacing Midway race break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, you can visit iRacing.com to sign up today. And if you use promo code PR-eNASCAR 2019, you can get your first 3 months as a member for just $10. That comes with a ton of cars and tracks to get your sim racing career started. Again, that is PR-eNASCAR 2019. That offer is valid on new iRacing memberships only. So now we return, guys, inside of the final 30 laps of this Pocono 200 to the waiting game to see just how early is the pit stop going to have to come from those top 4 now as Cordy Vincent continues to climb further and further up. Again, he was on pit road at 45. If there's a lead driver in that one-stop strategy, I think it's Vincent here, trying to chase down the likes of Zelensky, who is down pit road at lap 45 also. So he's trying to go the distance. Michael Guest in front of him, pitted at 39. That's too early. So in fact, I think it's Zelensky, the biggest challenger here, I should say here, up inside of the top 5 with Tien and Challenger behind him.
I think when you look at this full strategy here, you've got some different things in play, and with this long green flag run, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, touched on it, Evan, about conserving a little bit of fuel here, and this might be the time and the run to do so. Your top 2 have about 1.6 seconds or so. Ryan Lewis, the last couple laps, been a little quicker than Zach Novak, but nothing too spectacular. And then you've got battles like this throughout the field. You've got the 66 of Jarl Tien on your screen, Christian Chalner. This is a battle for position number 7 as we work through here. And right in front of them, Michael Grillia in the Jim Beaver eSports car, having a great run so far through all this pit cycle in position number 6. And one of the best runs that he's had all season long. It seems like once he's got that Jim Beaver blue on the car, it's really picked up his game, and great to see Michael having a great solid top 10 run in this one, just ahead of that battle. And there you see the 17 of Michael Guest, the 18 of Bobby Zelensky. We're seeing these quick little 2 and 3 car battles, at least in the top 10. There's a little bit of separation between these battles, and then you start working outside the top 15 or so, Evan, and then you start seeing some of those closer battles that we have within the pack, and it's hard to really get away from each other. But these guys here content to ride right now, and there's one of those battles. You see the 46 of Jimmy Mullis on the inside of the 30 of Blake Reynolds. There's some playoff implications. They're going side by side.
Reynolds is another driver trying to work with a little bit of damage. His left rear of that beneath the entry is torn up, and he's right now in between Mullis, who completes the pass at a turn 3, and of course the 77 of Crowder behind, who loses out in all of this. But the 30 car is going to come back at him, driving down to the inside in this fight for 9th on track, and looks like Crowder really went high into the corner to try to back this up. The 30 car gets tight. Can the 77 cross him up? Yes, he does. Well planned out for Crowder, and they'll go 2x2 down the stretch and to the tunnel turn. We'll see if they both stay in it. The 77 starts to trail a little bit, but they'll go at it. Stay there. That 30 car should get the run now down at this end of the racetrack, and that 74 of Taylor Hurst joins him.
Ashton right now really not having the momentum on that bottom groove. I think he pit a little bit earlier than the rest of this group, so the tires aren't going to be helping him. The run through turn 3, though, for Ashton looks good, but look at the run for the 74. Bit of contact, but they're able to hold on to it. Well held by Taylor Hurst as they came off of turn 3. That could have easily been a yellow and changed everything, but we're going to stay green. And now Taylor Hurst, after making that save off of 3, he wants the 10th spot away from Blake Reynolds.
It's a gutsy move by Taylor Hurst to stay in the gas after Crowder pushed up. Now he's the one that's tight. He'll squeeze Reynolds to the outside wall, and they'll both find the space to make it happen. Again, inside, can't carry that speed off the corner, and the 30 of Reynolds defends for the time being. Something tells me this trio of cars is not going to back off each other anytime soon as we close in on 33 now, and closer to 20 laps to go now in this race. All of these drivers in this group in particular are on the same strategy, so there is no waiting for anything to cycle through. And now Benjamin Nelson joins the picture. He is the 4th car in this train.
There's no saving here. There's no fuel strategy here. You're going for what you can right now, especially seeing this battle between guys like Taylor Hurst and Blake Reynolds sucks right up down into corner number 1, gets up into the back of the 30 and gives him a little shot in the shorts down into corner number 1. The 74 glides through corner number 1, takes a little peek to the inside of the beneath number 30 of Blake Reynolds, and will be to the inside this time as they head towards corner number 2. There's Ashton Crowder taking a little peek on the back bumper as well, with Ben Nelson a part of this battle. And there's great battles here outside the top 10 throughout, but this one here is definitely intense. They're going at it like it's the last lap, but right now we still have over 20 laps to go in this race in Pocono, and there's that run that Crowder gets on the outside. The loss for Taylor Hurst, maybe Ashton Crowder's gain if he can roll the top through 3.
It's a role reversal as the 30 car is slow off of the corner. Reynolds is going to come down to pit road, and I think that hurt Taylor Hurst a little bit. Zach Novak also, not going to be able to make it. We knew that the 6 car did not have the fuel to go the distance. It is an earlier pit stop that I would have expected, but he is in at lap number 53. Ryan Luza stays out. He would be the next driver to have to come in to make the distance, and very shortly, Bobby Zelensky, the lead driver, trying to stretch his fuel to the end, would become your race leader. Right now, he scored P2 with the Luza still out on track in the 53.
And that 53 car, I'm really curious to see when he comes down pit road, because I'll be honest, his entire strategy makes no sense to me. We know that he didn't come down late enough to be able to one-stop this race unless he's planning on going some ultra fuel save, which it doesn't look like it. And here he comes down on a pit road immediately. I was going to say, because at the first time he came down pit road, he waited 3 laps until Novak came down before he hit pit road. So he really didn't wait long enough to get to have a new tire advantage, and he didn't really come down long enough to be able to do anything with fuel. So I think Ryan at the first stop just basically cost himself time. This time he comes down 1 lap later, which is I think what he needed to do. So maybe being a little unsure on the strategy with the 53 Aluza, not knowing the fuel mileage, but the 18 of Zelensky, he's going to now lead this thing as he works down the Long Pond straightaway. The 27 of Corey Vincent runs second. Michael Gariglia is one scored in third.
So those who just pitted, no question, they're going to be able to go the distance in this race. Now is the fun part as Bobby Zelensky actually caught the wall a little bit that time out of 2, has assumed the race lead. He was on pit road at lap number 45, so he has to go 35 laps on a tank of fuel to make it the distance. We were hearing somewhere between 32 and 33 on fuel. If that's an accurate number, some saving is certainly involved in this, but Timmy, it's not like he can just hang way back and chill out, because this is kind of the dominant strategy. So you're still racing against everybody else. Corey Vincent only a second behind you in P2. Jarl T and Christian Challoner, those drivers within 3 seconds of the race lead. So while they're all going to be trying to save, and in theory they should all back off, someone's going to push it. It's going to force another car to give a little bit more, and these guys might run each other out of fuel, battling for position. We'll see who has the discipline if it is indeed as tight on fuel as we think it's going to be.
And if it is as tight as we think it is, you mentioned 33 might be the end of the pit window. If they're going 35 to save 2 laps of fuel here at Pocono, especially when you're battling for a position which could potentially end up being the win, oh, that's a big ask for some of these drivers. As you see Jarl T and the 37 of Chalner battling on your screen. That's her position number 3, about 2.5 seconds behind your leader, Bobby Zelensky. And there is a caution flag. Oh, boy.
Caution with 18 laps to go. Going to absolutely change this one up. And we take a look. Chris Shearburn, maybe the driver involved. There it is. The 36 car wrong way up against the outside wall. We'll look to the Race Spot TV replay, and very similar to an earlier incident we saw with Logan DeClampett. He was drafted with the 16 car of Chris Overland. This was off of the tunnel turn down to 3, and the 16 get a little bit too close on that left rear quarter panel, trying to take the air off of him and get some side draft, and he just hooked the 36 car around, and Chris Shearburn, who was in 19th position, takes a hard hit into the inside wall. That is really going to hurt him, after we talked about, of course, all of the implications of tonight's race, and this really changes up the strategy as well.
Yeah, this basically kills the strategy entirely. Everyone is going to be coming down on towards pit road except the drivers who just pit. So this might actually be advantage to Ryan Luza going that 1 lap longer than Zach Novak. He should get gifted the race lead here when the entire field eventually catches the pace car and is able to come down pit road for service, because everyone is coming down 100% for tires. And I think we're going to see Novak and Luza at the head of the field.
So we will see, again, those who just pitted and seem to be out on the strategy. They can stay out. They are good to go the distance. Tim, in theory, the cars that were trying to stretch it, if they had any hope of making it under green, they could save under yellow here and still make it to the end. But I think so many drivers are going to come in and get 4 tires that if you're Zelensky, you have to. But there's always a concern when you're that first car coming off of turn 4, or in this case, coming off of turn 3. If you dive down pit road, is everybody behind you going to stay out? If you stay out, is everybody going to behind you come down to the pit lane? There's an awful lot that's going to change in this race, and we'll find out in about 20 seconds or so as the pit lane opens, the field's up behind the pace car, and we wait to see who our takers are going to be.
Unless something crazy happens here, Evan, I would have to think guys like Zelensky, Vincent, everybody would come down and at least get tires and get that insurance and a little bit of stability. We get to that point in this race now where we see potentially this race have a few cautions at the end, or we could see this thing go green to the end of the race. We've seen it play out on both occasions here at Pocono in this series, and keep in mind there's some green-white checkers you have to conserve potentially for. So I think if you're the leaders and you're going to see them come down here, at least these guys up in front, especially if we do get some green-white checkers at the end, come down, packer full of fuel, get some tires on it, and set up for the run to the end of this one to try to get yourself a victory here at Pocono. Bobby Zelensky leads the field down to the attention of their crews.
And no surprise that Zach Novak stays out. I believe he was the only driver on the lead lap to in fact stay out, so everybody is down for their service on the pit lane. 4 tires is probably going to be what everybody wants. We'll see what the calls are, and of course, don't make a mistake on pit road. We've seen drivers do that already tonight as everybody is in the box and getting service. We've got the camera there on the pit lane exit as we see who will win the race off the pit road. It's awfully tight, but Corey Vincent, the 27 car, is able to get in front of the 18, and Vincent overtakes Zelensky. That'll be huge for track position as they all went with 4.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see how this pans off, and what lane you're in might be very, very important here. With 5 cars having a couple laps on the tires, if it's only a couple in the case of say Luza, as well as towards the back of that top 5, Michael Gariglia, he actually came down just 2 laps before that caution came out, but a couple of those guys have been out there 3 or 4 laps on those tires. So there's going to be a bit of a tire advantage there from 5th on back. So what lane you line up in compared to those guys ahead of you, that could be very, very important when we go back to green.
So just looking at how all of this plays through, Gariglia is out there, Reynolds, Guest, and then, of course, the ones that we expected, Luza and Novak, along with a couple of wave rounds, will get a clearer picture as lapped cars and whatnot are allowed to come down pit road. But I think we got some guys gambling, staying out, trying to get the track position, maybe banking on the fact that we get a lot of yellows to the end of this one. This final portion of tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Herculon, our truck bedliner. The tough comes easy. We'll step aside for a brief moment. When we come back, we'll get set for a race start inside of 15 to go.
Everything happens so fast.
Reckon. We're reading out of control.
It's a big mental game. Nothing ever goes to plan.
Pressure's on. Pressure's on to perform.
Freaking idiot.
I'm gonna race you how you race me.
It's gonna get crazy.
Oh, you're wailing on Ryan Newman.
Punches thrown.
Yeah, baby, yes!
If you're not tired, you didn't drive hard enough.
Maybe a fun preview tonight from the virtual Pocono Raceway of what you'll see this upcoming Sunday, but a caution flag has really thrown a wrench into the strategy we thought was certain in this Pocono 200, and it'll be a fun run to the end of this 12th race of the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. But if you're enjoying the action tonight, make sure to tune in this Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for a 1-hour special presentation of NASCAR America on NBCSN featuring the eNASCAR iRacing All-Star Race. This will be the first time a sim race will be broadcast live on network television in the U.S. So you're not going to want to miss out on this race featuring the top drivers of this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series taking to the virtual Iowa Speedway. You can join myself along with NASCAR America's Chris Devoda, Parker Kligerman, and AJ Allmendinger. iRacing team owners Steve Letarte, Jeff Byrne are also going to be a part of the action, covering the pre- and post-race festivities. Again, that's 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time this Thursday night on NBCSN. And No doubt that would be fun. Totally different kind of a racetrack. Short track Iowa, boring if you will, with these cup cars. But let's focus on the task at hand tonight, gentlemen. Tim, whole new race. We talked about those wide front straightaways and, you know, all the speed that you can build up down to turn one, how wide you can go. And it started to look like this race was going to be similar to last year's. Yellows early on, some green flag action. Strategy was going to be the dictating factor. Now I think it's down to a game of courage. A lot of drivers stayed out, more than I would have thought. We were almost certain Novak and Loser were going to stay out, but as the lights go on top of the pace car, you can throw Michael Guest, Blake Reynolds, and Michael Guerrilla in there with him. The top 5 did not pit. Everybody there on back with fresh 4 tires and guaranteed on fuel to the end.
And you saw that leaderboard, 15 laps to go. There'll be 14 laps to go when we send these drivers back underway, and that's given there's no green-white checker finishes in this event, which there very well could be, and we saw it at our last round. But Zach Novak, Ryan Luza, once we had that early caution that essentially took Keegan Leahy and Nick Ottinger out of the equation up in front of the field, these two have been the class of the field. Michael Guest has been consistent, Corey Vincent has been consistent, Jarl Tien has been fast, Jimmy Mullis has been fast, but now they're monitored in the back half of the top 10 when you talk about a guy like Jarl Tien and Jimmy Mullis or all this pit strategy. But there are still a lot of laps to go for those drivers to get to the front from a top 10 position, but I think this race comes down to Zach Novak and Ryan Luza. Luza has had a couple of rough races the last couple of rounds, trying to rebound from that. Zach Novak has just been so darn consistent, trying to really lock up his playoff chances. And then you look at a guy like Michael Guest, who really has to get up on the wheel and control his own destiny in the next 3 rounds. If you win the next 3 races, you're going to probably be a little bit closer to locking yourself into the playoffs if you're in a position like Michael Guest is. There could be a lot decided here in the next few laps. And we saw that restart earlier, Evan, where Nick Ottinger went 3 wide to the outside. That sense of urgency could be ramping up right here as they come out of 3.
Pace car going to dive down and in with 14 laps to go tonight from Pocono. Green flag back in the air with 5 cars on old tires up front and a lot of hungry cars behind it trying to find a way through. They're jockeying. Look to the inside. Michael Guerrilla going to get blocked all the way down by Corey Vincent. They're 3 wide inside of the top 5, 2 wide behind for the race lead. Here comes Novak on the outside with the speed. Luza going to look to the middle. 3 wide for the race lead off the corner. 4 wide behind them now as Luza's the one with all the momentum. He'll race for the lead to the tunnel turn, trying to take it away from Zach Novak. Looking to the inside. The 6 car going to try to hold strong. Luza's sideways, still neck and neck down to 3.
They're piling up. They're piling up off of 2. There's 3 cars involved in a big pile up through turn 2. This is in your mid-pack. I believe it was Ashton Crowder, who's having such a good run. I think got sent up into the outside wall, maybe in the 75. No, it was Ashton, I think, who got sent up there. So big damage for him, and that's going to bring out another yellow that resets the field. But man, that was fun to watch. Teammates 3 wide for the race lead between Novak and Michael Guest. That was a heck of a restart, and Luza will be scored with the lead.
It was some quasi 3 and 4 wide in that tunnel turn, and Taylor Hurst, I think, checked up or got door slammed, and he got pushed up into the 77 to Crowder. That's how Crowder ended up in the outside wall, and then of course cars around them crashed. Michael Conti was one of them, also spinning. I saw the 30 go, or the 80, sorry, of Brandon Cattell go all the way around, and a couple of other cars were into the outside wall. But I gotta say, Tim, not all that surprising, because that all stemmed from up front where we had a huge block by Corey Vincent there. It really blocked the racetrack, locked him into those 3 and 4 lanes, and it's not even that the cars that had stayed out were, you know, demonstrably slower. They certainly didn't have the bite off of the corner. We saw that with race out of 1 where Luza made his challenge on Novak, but it just all started with those fast cars trying to get it before turn 1, knowing that if I don't make the crazy move, the guy behind me is going to undercut me. I'm going to be stuck in the middle. So everybody tried to be the first one to make the move, and all of a sudden you end up with a traffic jam, 4 lanes down to the tunnel turn, and it just doesn't normally end well.
You need to do whatever you can to try to pick up those positions while everybody's bunched together on a restart. And if you're near the front of the field, if your guys fighting for that top spot like your Novaks, your Michael Guest, you need to get that clean air as quickly as you can. As you see the caution flag fly from the starter one more time, but you really need to get to the front when you have that opportunity and everybody is tucked up tight together. Are we going to see some drivers come down into pit road here? Sure we are. Michael Guest is going to come onto pit road, and he's going to surrender what would be position number 5 to do so down onto pit road. I believe Gariglia also decided to peel off in behind him. So we've got some drivers that are coming down and maybe potentially taking fuel tires, but you look back there, a lot of those drivers stayed out on the racetrack. So Michael Guest and Michael Griglia, they're going to have a long road to hoe to get back up to the front of the field and what will be around 10 laps or so without any green-white checkers.
And of course, Michael Guest had stayed out on the yellow flag previous to this and obviously saw something that he didn't like while he was out there. So the reason he had such good track position is because he stayed out the first time. Pitting the second time, I think, is retrospectively going to cost him a lot more than if he just came down to the pit lane, Randy, in the first place. But I guess wanted to go out there and try it out and maybe feeling like this race is going to have a couple of restarts, because one thing that we didn't get an opportunity to talk about, but we're probably going to hit pretty shortly before the yellow prior to this came out, was, drivers were so tight on trying to make it to lap 80. No longer are we only focused on going to the scheduled distance because of overtime and the green-white-checkered finishes. And, of course, we saw that just last week with an exciting win by Zach Novak at Kentucky Speedway. You need a little bit more, so maybe Guest figuring this thing could go into overtime. We could have a handful of restarts due up, and I'm going to want a fresh race car. My concern would be you're pitting, you're putting yourself back into traffic, and if there's going to be calamity to lead to those restarts, that's probably where it's coming from, but we will see how it plays out for him, as it looks like he's going to be scored in the 20s.
I don't like the call whatsoever. I really don't understand what he's thinking here, because if he's thinking we're going to go 10 laps to the end, most of the cars out there on the racetrack, they either just got brand new tires at the caution, or the tires are only 2 or 3 or 4 laps old before that. So you're not going to have as much of a tire advantage to run your way through the field, and you're going to be in the mid-pack, which tends to be no man's land on the restarts, because if anything happens, if it happens at the head of the field, that means everyone has to check up, and your chances of getting caught up in it are much higher than if you're just running 5th in the first place. And even if his plan is, oh, well, we might get overtime, might have a green-white-checkered, green-white-checkered's only 2 laps at the maximum, and only 1 lap or half a lap or less if we then get a yellow and go to a second or even third attempt. So I don't think there's enough time for this schedule, or for this race, for the 17 of Michael Guest, for this strategy to pan out. I don't know if it's inexperience with Michael, but I don't see any way where it makes sense to give up 18 positions on track position away just for what's going to be a 10 to maybe 16 lap run with the GWC. That's I'm perplexed. I really don't see the logic.
We'll see how it plays out. You could just as easily end up in a situation like we saw very early in this race when we saw the big crash in turn 2, where the accident actually happens up front, in that case on the front row. All of those front cars crash, and the guys in the 20s and the 30s end up the front. Maybe they're expecting that level of calamity again, but it is just so impossible to predict how those incidents will come, where they'll come from, and what a safe place to be is on the racetrack. We saw with that earlier incident that not even the front row is safe, because that was the 3-wide battle into the tunnel turn that created the contact that actually caused all of it. At that time, Zach Novak was on the bottom. He's really one of the only cars, top 5, top 10, to have survived that by diving low and avoiding all of the calamity behind him. So, Novak gets this rejuvenation. He and Luza battling for the race lead. No surprise to see these two cars duking it out. And Luza had actually just inched in front of Zach Novak, Tim, when the caution flag came out. Again, these were the 2 cars that were on the 2-stop strategy. We're kind of back in the pack together. Novak got it really tight, had to get out of the gas off of 1, open the inside for Luza. He didn't complete the pass. Novak was there, probably on the outside, would have got a better run, but when the yellow flag came out, as you see the lights go out on top of the pace car and we get set for another restart, at that moment, it was still Luza, barely with the nose in front, so that's why the 53 will be the control car. That is huge for this restart.
One thing you touched on here, and that was the drivers that are moving up and moving back. When you look in the top 10 right now, there's only 4 drivers that started in the top 10 that are currently running in the top 10. Ryan Lewis and Zach Novak being 2 of them. Then you look back to Bobby Zielinski running, or started 7th, running in 8th, and then right in front of him, Corey Vincent. started in 4th, running in position number 7. But I look back, Garrett Lowe was involved in the first caution. He runs in the top 12 right now in 12th place. Look at Ray Alfala. He's had some damage so far this evening, and he's running in 17th. Chris Overland was involved in a recent caution. They're still running in position number 18. So the two Wood Brothers teammates, as you can see them line up almost on the same row back there at the back of your picture. So there's some drivers that have had some tough luck, a rough sled here this evening, but they're still trying to rebound here. And if we have a little contact up in front, it ends up being a dodging of some wrecks. You might see some guys like Ray Alfala sneak away with the top 10 finish before it's all said and done here at Pocono. But with the lights out, we're getting ready to see another one of those fantastic restarts. I can't wait to see the 3 and 4 wide racing that we're going to see here on this restart with this rules package.
We've seen all but one of our races on an oval this season be separated at the end, a margin of victory less than 1 second. Something tells me tonight at Pocono is going to be another thrilling one, so buckle up because we are far from over in this Pocono 200. A pace car down it in. The scoring to pylon says 9 laps to go. It's the 53 Orion Lusa, still old tires, going to put the right foot down. Green flag back in the air. Zach Novak with a pretty good jump alongside him. They'll drag race for the lead to turn 1. A little bit calmer behind them, top 10.
They're still fanning out nearly 3, 4, and potentially 5 wide. Nearly 7 lanes of this racetrack getting utilized in towards turn 1. The 53 of Lusa is going to defend on the bottom. 4 wide for second. Ben Nelson gets set up in the wall. The 6 of Novak's up there, and he's going to get freight trained. It's going to be Christian Chandler who benefits, and he's going to slot his way into second, and Kerwin's going to get into third.
Zelensky, he'll come up the middle, 3 wide. He rockets into 3rd place at the Interstate Batteries Toyota. It'll be 4th in line. Lusa leads out of the tunnel turn. Challenger scored in 2nd position. Kerwin, in fact, is 3rd. And then Zelensky in 4th as here comes the 14. He'll look low on the 37. Can't make it happen. And Challenger's going to have the better run off of the corner. Watch the JTG Darty Racing entry. He closes from 2 car lengths to 1. It's half a car length now in the 1 Tim challenge yet. He looks to the inside. Lusa doesn't block though, and he'll stay behind as Zelensky goes to the inside for 3rd.
Bobby Zelensky taking a look. Casey Kerwin had a great restart there, moved himself up and firmly into the top 5. The 37 at Challenger, top 3 in this race last year. Caution flag will fly.
Cody Bias in the 24 was loose. He goes around, and it is a big mess in the center of the pack. That'll set us up for another late race restart. The replay will show that he and the 99 of Logan Clampett, there's Clampett, late dive to the inside. Didn't really have a spot, but tried to flash the nose and convinced the 24 to give it to him. Didn't happen. There was contact. You can see how long Bias was trying to save it for. The 99 did a good job of not tagging him again, and I thought Bias had it, but then he came back up on track. They were 3 wide. He pinches the 79, the 19's there, the 33, and it is another huge mess. This time it's out of turn 1.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Bias just didn't get a call from the spotter or what, but they were 3, nearly 4 wide up above him, and he just sort of tried to come up on the racetrack and get there and get to that sort of point on the racetrack and try to go moving forward. I don't know if he was maybe frustrated with the 99 and maybe trying to be a little bit retaliatory or what the deal was, but that was, I think, a little silly by the 24. Now, at the head of the field, we will get another restart before we get into overtime territory. That is a given. And Evan, I do not like the 53 right now to win this race. He's got the slightly older tires than the drivers who would have waited until the caution to come down pit road. And that 37 of Challenger was not wasting time at setting him up. I think the 37 and the 14 are going to get around the 53, and I think those two are going to duke it out. And it's fitting for Casey, as he's just 1 year ago today, we saw him have a bit of a medical emergency, miss a couple races last year because of it, and he comes out and he's running 3rd 1 year after.
It's awfully good to see that Peak sponsor number 14 forward at a good spot. Zelensky also, who I mentioned, made that incredible 3 wide move in turn 2. All these cars are going to be right up and on Lusa. Of course, the benefit that he gets, Tim, is he'll be the control car for the restart, so he can go first. I would expect it to be a very early jump for the G Fuel Flipside Tactics Toyota Camry. But I mean, after turn 1, when they start to get on it, even though it's only 5 lap difference on tires, 5 to 10 give or take, depending on which specific driver combo we're talking about. So it is a small advantage, but I mean, Challenger was setting him up. All these cars were getting a chance. The question will be, how many laps do we get? Of course, this might end up with 3 laps to the end, and that extra 2.5 miles could make a huge difference.
Absolutely, it could. It gives you an opportunity to set somebody up, going down into turn 2 or turn 3. There's a long way around here to try to set up your move and try to figure out how you are going to execute it to try to take away the victory, and make sure that driver behind you doesn't have that opportunity to make that move back. But I was about to say, Chalner finished in the top 3 in this race last year. He's had momentum in this series. Can he take away a victory here? I think he can, but Ryan Lewis has been solid up in front. But then we saw Zach Novak on that last restart fall all the way back and currently scored, he's scored outside the top 20 right now. So he's not where he wanted to be, but these restarts, as we saw, 2, 3, 4, and potentially 5 wide as they fan out in the front straightaway. Anything can happen, but Ryan Luza going to be in control of this one. But I like where Christian Chalner is sitting. He has an opportunity to crack that bubble and get in to eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series victory lane. Be one of the bigger stories, I would think, of this season so far.
I'm sure it's emotionally nerve-wracking for Ryan Luza to be pacing around leading this race, knowing what is to come as we get set for what could be the final restart of this race here on Race Spot TV and the iRacing Sports Network. Still plenty of action coming up on the iRacing Sports Network, including this weekend for the Porsche Esports Super Cup. Round 8 takes on the Nürburgring this Saturday.
40 of the best sim racers, $100,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? This is the most competitive and sought-after season in iRacing World Championship history. This is where legends are made. This is the Porsche Esports Super Cup.
So make sure you tune in for that one. But back here at the Pocono Raceway, lights stayed on top of the pace car. Word from the tower is 2 to green, so the lights will come off the next time by. When we take lap number 77, we will go green, taking 78. So it is a 3-lap run to the end of this Pocono 200. Of course, we do have to complete those first 2 laps to get to the white flag for it to be official. If we do not and we see another yellow, we will officially head to NASCAR overtime. 3 attempts, a maximum of 3 shots at a green-white-checkered finish. We saw our first taste of that 2 weeks ago. Only needed 1 to resolve that one, and Zach Novak picked up his 3rd win of the 2019 campaign. And I don't know, if I'm losing, what do I want, guys? Do I want to get these 3 laps to the end and get it over with, or would a series of 1 or even half-lap sprints in yellows help me out? Because it seems like it takes just a little bit for those fresh tires to kick in, but once they do, they're pretty lethal. So I don't really know what Luz is hoping for here.
I think Randy's probably a better driver than I am, and he's probably a better strategist than I am. But Randy, I would think that if you're Ryan Luza, you want to get out in front and you want to make sure you're clear of all this mess that is likely going to happen behind you and get this thing done. You want to get those 2 laps in that you can get to that white flag and guarantee yourself a finish. Do you want to run a green-white checker here at Pocono if you're that leader?
I think if I had a choice between running a green-white checkered and what this will be 3 laps instead of just 2, I would certainly take the green-white checkered. But Luz is good enough that I think he can potentially defend either way. So we're going to see the lights go out on the iRacing safety car this time through, and it will be a 3-lap run on this restart. And it's going to be spicy. I don't think Luz is in for a great situation regardless. I think as long as Challenger gets a good restart, he has enough time, either if it's a 3-lap run here or a 2-lap run through a green-white checker, to pick that spot up. He just has to time the restart right, and he has to get the right run in the right spot. And I think importantly, not get forced 3 wide down in towards turn 1, which could of course open the door for the likes of Kerwin, Zelensky, and Mullis, and everyone there back behind you. And I wouldn't know if I'd define myself as a better driver than you, Tim. Maybe I might be able to scarf down more hot dogs than you, but I don't know about wheeling race cars.
You got a rebuttal for that, Tim? Or are you going to accept that and take it as a compliment?
I threw down the gauntlet.
I think we're just going to accept it as it is. Martinsville with the hot dogs is not on the schedule for the end of the season, so I think we're going to leave it at that. But this field's getting ready to go back to green, Evan. I like Chalner's chance on the outside. This is probably his best chance in recent memory to win one of these eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series races. Ryan Luza on the inside, but I'll take a page out of Randy's book. These guys are hungry for a victory. Ryan hasn't been to victory lane in a while. He's had a couple of rough races. Chalner looking for his first. Casey Kerwin is in there too, and then Bobby Zielinski looking to repeat what he did on the road course a couple of weeks ago and try to get that thing back to victory lane.
Yeah, half the drivers on the front two rows without a win in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. The other two, Luza, Zielinski, they've got quite a few in their back pocket. We'll see how this one plays out as we get set for what could be the final restart of the night. So pace car to dive down. It is an Old Tires 53 Toyota of Ryan Luza who takes the green flag. 3 more laps to go, and he gets a healthy jump. Here comes Kerwin up the inside, side by side for second. You can see the calamity behind as they're 6 wide into 1, but here's the battle for the race lead. It's Kerwin to the inside. Luza trying to defend, side by side at a turn 1. The 46 car there as well. Don't count out Mullis as they go 2 by 2 for the race lead.
Where did Malik Ray come from? The 90 car looking for a shot at this one, and they're going side by side in front. The 14 of Casey Kerwin picked up that opportunity. Little contact, cautions out.
You think it was in front? Casey Kerwin with the nose in front as the caution flag comes out. This race is not over, but you see the heavy damage on Timmy Hill's Flipside Tactics Toyota. It is an incident in the tunnel turn. We'll take a look at the Race Spot TV replay. You can see all the chaos here. Hard to track where he is. He's the black and green Toyota on the outside line right there, and it is more contact on the straightaway. Clampett gets a little bit of a shot by the 6. Yeah, the 6 got him in the right rear. Didn't really look like he turned down on him a ton, but really he was trying to cross him over, but that little bit of contact turns the 99 up the hill, and it's a healthy hip jack for the 63 car at Timmy Hill. He gets a lot of damage just by nature of coming up and into the field, but another driver who took a big hit was Logan Clampett, who slapped the inside wall.
And I think in some ways you might even be able to argue that 99 somewhat caused it. We know Novak, after that restart, he opted to come down pit road. He restarted somewhere around 20th. And he went out there, and honestly, the 99 mirror drove him down Long Pond straightaway. 99 drove all the way to the bottom. Novak went to the middle, and then Logan cut right up the racetrack in front of him and turned himself across the 6's nose. That's really what caused all that. So green-white-checkered going to be coming out here. And for this 14 car, Casey Kerwin, he ran worst last night in the World of Outlaws feature event at Volusia for their esports championship, sponsored by Morton Buildings. And he's going out and he's fighting for first here tonight. So it'd be I think he'll take losing last night to potentially pick up this one.
The 53 is still there. Luza has an opportunity to come back, and he really tried to pinch. I thought the accident, Tim, was going to come out of front row because, I mean, he got right up on the right rear quarter panel of Kerwin, tried to slow him down a little bit, squeeze him low, and I was just waiting for that Ford to get turned into the outside wall. I was certain that's where the incident was going to come from. Instead, Kerwin was going to get the spot anyways, but at the moment of yellow, Kerwin was your race leader, so the same way Luza got the lead is the way he loses it. The 14 will become the top car. The 53 is still there, but this is far from over. Mullis, Challenger, you mentioned Malik Ray, all those drivers still in a very good position, and they know now that it will be a 2-lap run at the end as this one officially enters overtime.
And with the way this package is, when you look at everybody that was racing on that restart, Ryan loses a control car, but when you look at it, he was almost vulnerable to a point where he had Casey Kerwin to the inside, and eventually Kerwin has that lead. I don't think anybody's safe. We saw Bobby Zielinski in the top 5 got shuffled out with Corey Vincent as they were battling hard for position. I don't know if anybody's safe on this restart. Yes, you might be the control car. Yes, you might have the opportunity to restart this race, but with the way this package is, with the way that everybody gets up to speed, if you're Casey Kerwin, you're Ryan Luza, I don't think you're safe right now. I don't think there's anybody that can really feel comfortable being in the lead, and with 3 attempts at this green-white-checker finish, you have to be on the wheel, and number 1, make sure you get to the white flag on 2 of those opportunities to get that checkered flag at the end of it. But if I'm Casey Kerwin or Ryan Luza, and especially Ryan Luza starting on the outside of the front row and Chalner starting on the outside, I don't feel safe right now, and I feel a little vulnerable if I'm the leader too.
Challenger might also get kind of stuck behind Luza. The reason that, of course, you saw the 53 get off to such a good jump as he controls the start of this race. When the pace car dives down, he's got a bubble between that point and when they actually reach the exit of the restart box to start the race. That's how he got such a good launch, and by the time they got to one, you could tell that he had those a little bit more worn out tires. No doubt the 14 is going to try to rocket off in front. I wouldn't be surprised if Mullis follows him right through to second. Challenger gets pinched behind Luza. Not by nature the 53 sleeping, just he's not going to be able to respond quite as crisp as some of these other cars, and it could be problematic for the 37 on the outside line. The lights stay on top of the pace car again. It is a very interesting dynamic as you look at the top 5 there on the scoring pylon. 3 of the drivers who sit top 5 right now without a win in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series. Of course, Luza wanting to play spoiler. Mullis would love to pick up his second win, backing up his victory last year at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. So there's a lot of storylines and a lot of interesting faces up front, and I guess we shouldn't be all that surprised, Randy, because very early on we had that big wreck in turn 2, and you made the point of mentioning that, all the cars up inside of the top 5 and top 10, nearly all of them came from outside the top 20. It was 15th through or 5th through 25th or something like that. You mentioned they would all come through the field, and that's kind of stayed true. Malik Gray, 39th to 5th. Christian Challenger, 31st to 4th. There's still been the constants. Vincent's still here. Don't count out Bobby Zelensky. He's still there. There's Cord in 6th and 7th position right now. But a lot of these cars from way at the back to the front have to take advantage of this. But it might be a tall ask at trying to survive, again, a maximum of 3 more restarts.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that for a lot of these guys that picked up so many of these spots. And for so many of them, there's so much on the line. The 14 occur when he comes into this thing 14th in the points. This could potentially spring him to a top 8 once we get into the playoffs. Jimmy Mullis, 9th in the points coming into the race. He sits in 3rd. Christian Challenger, 11th. He sits 4th. Michael Guest, he came in 12th in points. He currently sits 11th. And if memory serves me right, he's on the newest tires of all. So that 17 car is going to be quick on the restart. Logan Clampett, he had issues, and for the most part, Corey Vincent's the last one that's running near the front. He came into this race 16th in the points. He runs 6th. So there's a lot of cars near the front of the field that are fighting tooth and nail to get into that top 8, and they're all pretty much fighting for this win at this point. I don't think it's out of the question that we see 3, 4, and 5 wide going to turn 1 on these green and white checkers. I think we're at least going to attempt number 2.
Again, Casey Kerwin just looking to add a win at this top sim racing level to his virtual trophy cabinet, if you would, Tim. A driver who has over 400 official race wins on the iRacing service. He wins nearly 25% of those starts in all official racing on iRacing. That's one of the highest percentages of all the drivers in this 2019 class. But again, the win that has eluded him has been these ones on Tuesday nights. A perfect opportunity to try to go for it here. The driver who's competing in his 2nd season in this series will have a good shot at it with the lights off and the restart coming up next time by.
Yeah, you've got some interesting characters here in the top 5. Obviously, Casey Kerwin is good on multiple disciplines, as you mentioned. He's running on Monday nights in the World of Outlaws late models. Ryan Luza really good at this oval series and has picked up a championship. You look at Jimmy Mullis, you look at Christian Challenger, who's been strong the last couple of weeks. How about Malik Gray? Came out of absolutely nowhere. Started in 39th position. He's up to position number 5 in the Sunoco number 90 for Richmond Raceway Esports. The 27 on his outside. Corey Vincent has been solid and consistent all night long. You look down the list. Garrett Lowe was involved in the first caution flag earlier in the race, and he's back in the top 10. With the way this package runs, I don't know how you can predict a winner. Heck, Chris Overland's up there on the outside of row number 6. I don't know how you're going to predict a winner from this, but ooh, it's going to be fun to watch.
Pace car to dive down and in. It is our first attempt at a green-white-checkered finish tonight from Pocono. There goes Casey Kerwin, green flag in the air. 2 more laps to go. He'll immediately go to the outside to try to hold off Luza. Here comes Mullis on the inside. It'll be a fight for second place. He's got a big push though. Malik Ray, Bobby Zelensky, all shoving to turn 1. 46 looks low. Kerwin shuts the door.
The mid-pack was tame entering turn 1. They were only 2 wide. This time through, the 46 of Mullis get to run off of turn 1 and down Long Pond straightaway. They're going to be side by side through the tunnel turn. We've not seen the outside be the place to be here. The 46 of Mullis, he is going to look low. Can Casey hold on up top? Seem like the answer is probably going to be no. The 46 of Mullis takes the lead, but he's not clear. Kerwin fights back on the outside. They come in towards 3, looking for the white.
The 14 Campados, and that's big. The 46 drives it in so hard on the inside. What a corner for Jimmy Mullis. He'll pull 4 car lengths off of turn 3. White flag in the air. It's the last lap.
He pulled the field like they were standing still in corner number 3, but look at the run they get down the front straightaway. Malik Ray to the inside. They're going to suck right up to Jimmy Mullis. The 14 of Casey Kerwin looking for that first win. Jimmy Mullis looking to hang on. It's now a battle for position number 3. Take a look at that. It's Malik Ray and Ryan Luza side by side. Your top 2 battling for this win. Can Casey Kerwin pull one out of his back pocket?
Kerwin has to make up a 5-car length deficit. Final time at a tunnel turn now. Ray as well, the 18 of Zelensky. They all get around the 53 machine as Luza slides on all tires. But at the front of the field, it is Jimmy Mullis with an incredible lap off of the restart. Work the inside line. He'll be clear at a turn number 3 to get his second ever win in the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, capturing the win tonight from Pocono. Second week in a row, it came down to overtime. What a win for the 46.
What a win for him. This is so important, not only, of course, to pick up your second win in the series, as the 14 of Kerwin will pull alongside and wish him congratulations, but like we said, came in 9th in the points. He's going to put himself comfortably in the top 8 with the likes of Bobby Zelensky, Nick Ottinger, Michael Connie, and importantly, Keegan Leahy having bad runs tonight. Jimmy Mullis looks like he's setting himself up for a playoff run after the big win here at Pocono.
What a run, and talk about the critical times to get on a streak. We talked about how streaky of a year it has been, Tim, and now's the opportunity to get hot, of course. If you want to get race wins, now's the time to do it. Huge accomplishment, not only in how difficult it is to get a win here, of course. That other win, as I mentioned, coming last year for the virtual New Hampshire Motor Speedway. There is never a guarantee that you'll get another win. You never know how this plays out with the relegation in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, but you can see the respect for the other drivers as they all pull up alongside and congratulate him. A feel-good win for Jimmy Mullis. He'll do some celebrating on the front straightaway, this time off of the corner. But how about Kerwin? Malik Ray also 2 drivers behind for their first ever win, coming up just shy in 2nd and 3rd.
How about the run for Richmond Raceway Esports, 1st and 3rd here this evening? Jimmy Mullis, Malik Ray, both having great runs, and congratulations to that 46. Lighting it up here on the front straightaway with the Sim Seats Toyota, putting on a show, coming out with the win, and as we mentioned, getting himself a little bit closer to playoff contention. Nothing is for certain here yet, but this is definitely going to help him.
Let's take a look top to bottom at your unofficial RaceSpot TV full race results from tonight. Jimmy Mullis to victory lane atop Casey Kerwin, who comes home in 2nd. Malik Ray is 3rd. Bobby Zelensky finishes in 4th position, and Garrett Lowe rounds out your top 5. We'll be trackside with all of them in just a moment. Ryan Luza ends up in 6th after slotting on that last restart. Chris Overland, he was in a wreck earlier tonight. He gets a top 10. He finishes P7. Corey Vincent's behind him at 8th, with the RLT finishing 9th, and Jake Nichols rounding out your top 10.
Finishing in position number 11, you have the 83 of Adam Benefield. Started scratch on the field here this evening to come up to 11th. Ray Alfala in 12th. Nice rebound for him. Michael Guerrilla finishes in 13th. Ryan Lowe and Taylor Hurst finishes in 15th. Kane Cook, great run to 16th. Michael Conti salvages 17th out of tonight. Logan Kress in 18th. The double nickel of Brian Schoenberg in 19th. And his William Esports teammate Matt Busa right in behind him in 20th.
And for rounding out the field, Dylan Duvall ends up 21st. Nick Ottinger in 22nd. Nicholas Shelton 23rd. Blake Reynolds 24th, Eric Smith in 25th, Ben Nelson 26th, Keegan Leahy, your points leader coming into this thing, started on the pole. He ends up in 27th. Chris Shearburn 28th, Logan Clampett 29th, Phil Diaz ends up 30th, and a number of cars who are near the front of the field on that restart, they get into incidents, the first of them being the 17 of Michael Guest. He will come home 31st, a disaster of what looked like a perfect night for him to potentially propel him into the top 8. Casey Tucker 32nd, Cody Bias 33rd, and Christian Challoner, the other car, caught up in that last lap restart. Instead of finishing up near the top 5, he'll come home 34th with Zach Novak, Brandon Case-Cattell, Timmy Hill, Nathan Lyon, Ashton Crowder, and Brad Davies rounding out your 40-car field tonight.
So look top to bottom at your unofficial RaceSpot TV results. We'll take a quick opportunity to step aside, and when we come back, post-race action will continue. We'll talk with your top finishers and take another look at that last lap. Your winner tonight from Pocono is the number 46 of Jimmy Mullis. Gotta love this time of year. Only one can be champion. Let's go playoff racing. I said, hey, hey, there's no surrender. Let 'em hear my battle cry. Welcome back live to the virtual Pocono Raceway for the second week in a row. It took overtime and a green-white-checkered to finish to wrap up the race. As your winner tonight is Jimmy Mullis of the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, welcoming you back in the RaceSpot TV's continuing coverage of the iRacing Esports Network. And a whole lot went down as we bring you back into the booth. Evan Pasoko, Tim Terry, and Randy Chaneth with you. We'll go trackside and talk with the drivers in just a moment, guys, but let's take a look at the incident there. That was the last lap contact. You see the 17 hard into the inside wall. All of this happening after we took the white flag, so that's why this race was official. Really hurt the finishing positions for those drivers.
There's some drivers in this wreck like Christian Challoner and the 17 of Michael Guest who really put themselves behind the 8 ball, and there's Challoner and Guest, two drivers that are looking for playoff contention and playoff spots. It's going to definitely hurt them as we go forward. They've got 2 races to try to salvage what they can and try to get themselves into championship contention and try to win some big money at the end of the year.
They wrecked behind, but you could see the 46 car was clear off of the corner, and we are trackside now with the driver of the number 46 machine. Jimmy Mullis is your race winner tonight for the virtual Pocono Raceway. Jimmy, congratulations on the win. What a night from Pocono, a combination of uniquely timed caution flags, mix it up the strategy, and just for an extra measure, some late race restarts to make this one exciting. Just tell us about it from the perspective of behind the wheel of the 46 car there battling late.
Oh, it was absolutely insane. It was really intense, and you know, coming into tonight, I knew that this race was going to get pretty wild, especially if we had some late restarts. And luckily, I just was able to keep my car clean all night and you know, put myself in position to have a shot at it there at the end, and just got a really good corner through turn 1 on the restart and pretty much never looked back. So I don't know, man. Once again, after winning, I don't really know what to say.
Well, it is a good problem to have, of course, second career win in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, and obviously coming at an opportune time because we talked about a lot of the drivers near that playoff bubble having rough nights. Nick Ottinger, who was the last driver in coming into tonight, had early issues in this race, and all of the late race chaos helped him out a bit, but he finishes in 22nd position. You came into tonight 6 points behind him. We'll certainly look to make that leap ahead and a big step in the overarching goal for you, which is, of course, to make it into the playoffs and fight for a championship. You've improved on your finish in the points year after year. 18th in your debut season in 2017. You finished 11th in the season last year, and, of course, are trying to make a real play and put your Richmond Raceway Esports car in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Tonight was huge, especially with all those guys having trouble. It's not really something you necessarily wish for, but you know, for my sake, it's pretty good that I was able to come out on top tonight with all of them having trouble. I think I've probably built a relatively nice gap for these last 2 regular season races, which is really, really what I needed. I feel like if I get into the playoffs, you know, I might have a shot at doing something, and I've worked really hard this year, or really the past 3 years, to just better myself, and to be in this position with 2 races to go is, you know, really awesome and really special.
Of course, you do have to now protect, which, I mean, it's a good problem to have. We had a conversation in the booth tonight about controlling your own destiny. When you are coming from behind, not only do you have to go out there and put down a good performance, but you do need the cars in front of you to have some issues. Now that you're playing defense, you can control your own destiny at a couple of unique racetracks coming up to end the season. We'll go back to somewhat of a familiar place, I guess, MIS in 2 weeks' time. We raced at Fontana earlier this year, but I think obviously the big question mark is Bristol, and I'm sure you'd like to have a healthy points gap going into that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you ever want to be on the outside looking in, you know, this late into the season. And Bristol was one I was really worried about, and obviously still am, because I'm not locked in, so anything can happen. Just have to knock these last 2 races out. Michigan is going to be a lot more hectic than tonight was, I believe. With it being a repave, you can probably move around a lot more, and we won't be slowing down for the corners as much, so you won't see cars get spread out as much, so that's going to be pretty interesting. But yeah, like you said, man, being ahead is definitely better than being behind.
A big step in the right direction for you guys tonight. Race win from the Pocono Raceway. How is, if at all, these green-white-checkered finishes now seen in the last 2 weeks in a row, how does that modify the strategy at all for you, if any? Because before one of the late race yellows came out, the strategy seemed to be pretty tight on fuel just to get to the lap 80 marker.
Yeah, I was personally good on fuel. We made sure we stayed out long enough to make it, and we pit way earlier in the race, one of the early yellows before we got the super long run, to make sure that, you know, we wouldn't really have to be concerned about the fuel situation. But I know a lot of guys in front of me were kind of pushing it and pushing their window there at the end. So that was a little concerning that the late yellow came out, because I felt like I might have had a shot at winning just based on fuel strategy. But, you know, luckily I was still able to pull it off.
We'll let you get out of here. Before we do, as always, Jimmy, the sponsors, the shout-outs, all of those good folks. Who makes it happen for the 46 Toyota?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to first off give a huge thanks to Richmond Raceway for all they've done for me. I feel like they took a chance on me this season because I didn't feel like I performed to the way that I should have for them last season. And, you know, for them to take another shot on me and for us to, you know, win another race together is really special. I want to thank Sim Seats and everyone over there for all they do, Sunoco for all they've done this season, you guys for, you know, all the great broadcasts every week, and huge thanks to my teammates at Lockdown Racing. We work so hard every week, and I can't stress it enough. Like Taylor and Zach, the amount of work they put in is just incredible, and to see us win 2 races in a row now is pretty special. And I want to quickly give a shout out to Malik, getting a P3 there. He helped me going into 1 to get under Casey, so big thanks to him, and really glad to see him have a good run with me.
A great night for you guys tonight, especially on the Richmond Raceway Esports front with the 1st and 3rd place finish tonight. Jimmy, we appreciate your time, though. Again, congratulations on the win, and we'll see if you guys can keep the ball rolling in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you, Evan.
Your race winner tonight from Pocono, Jimmy Mullis, gets it done. An incredible 8-race restart, fighting for the race win, the second of his career, first of 2019. He officially moves up and in to the current list of playoff drivers scored in the top 8 in points. Moving on down the line, Casey Kerwin comes up just shy of his first career win. Trackside with him is Randy.
Casey, last night we saw you in the World of Outlaws Morton Buildings late models. You ran worst. You come out tonight and go into the green-white-checkered. You had the opportunity to fight for first. Pretty stark contrast between 2 days. What goes through your head when you have the race lead, see that we're going to go to a green-white-checkered, and know you're likely to be 3 wide going into turn 2 on that first lap of the restart?
Don't pass out under caution. That was the first thing. But then on the restart, I knew it really depended on if I got a big jump, then they could get a really big run from the draft and try and get underneath me. But thankfully it worked out just right where Jimmy didn't quite get underneath me. But Jimmy just had a lot more turn and was turned underneath me and beat me through the tunnel. But to run second, it's a freaking win for me. So just kind of took it easy there whenever we were side by side. But just, yeah, I was freaking out like crazy. Glad I didn't pass out pacing. I thought that was going to happen like 7 different times. But yeah, we made it through. Brought home P2. Couldn't be any happier.
And last year around this time, I believe it's about a year to the day at this point, you had a serious medical condition, and you gave birth to a happy baby appendix. And I know it's something you've played off positively, and I saw on your stream you were clutching the plushie. You have it. Good to see a positive attitude towards those sorts of things that can pop up. How does it feel going from a potentially life-threatening issue last year to being able to run for wins pretty much exactly a year later?
Yeah, it's insane. I didn't even really. We made the meme on my stream. We had the nice Lightning McQueen party hat on the appendix plushie on stream, so that was good. I didn't even really think about it until we were just kind of pacing, and I'm sitting here leading a year after, like a year to the date last year. I started and parked not Pocono. It was New Hampshire. I started and parked New Hampshire like 4 hours out of surgery, just to get like 4 points, just to come back, and then a year later to have my career best run and be leading on the final restart at Pocono. Is just insane. But yeah, I still can't believe it.
And this race did good things for you in the points as well, finishing second, made potentially making the top 8 a lot more reasonable and a lot more realistic. You're currently about, I think, let's see, my math is not great, I believe 46 points off the current cutoff, which is still Ottinger 332 to get into the top 8. And you have a difficult pair of racetracks coming up, and really kind of stark contrasting types of racetracks coming up. Michigan, I think we're going to see a lot of drafting like what we saw at Auto Club, and actually in some ways probably similar to what we saw tonight. And then we go for 250 laps around Bristol. How do you think you have a good chance to survive those 2 intense races and get your way into the top 8?
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully we'll have some good speed. Michigan's probably going to be a big brawl with all the drafting that's going on. It's probably going to be a lot like tonight, just positioning yourself well in restarts. Getting through, kind of get yourself positioned so when the dirty air does start to hit a little bit, you don't get shuffled out. And then, but that should be a pretty good race with the long straightaways, should make for an exciting one. And then Bristol is, the last great Coliseum. That's going to be a lot about track position probably at first, but if the lanes move around, it can get pretty racy. So I like both the tracks, so hopefully I can run well there. And first, I didn't even know, but I was informed that now I'm only like 20 points out of the chase, so hopefully we can have 2 good runs, maybe in the top 5, and maybe out of nowhere end up in the chase. So that's the goal now.
Well, I'll tell you the totals because my math is, let's just say suspect. It's 332 for top 8 at the moment, and you said at 286. So you're about 40-some-odd points back here or there. But regardless, Casey, a fantastic run, and you were a lot of fun to watch on those late race restarts. Before we let you go, who gets it done for the number 14 Clint Boyer Racing Ford?
Yeah, just got to thank Houston Hamer and Dustin Lingert for the base. Houston's helped me a lot in my career. Wouldn't be in the series without him. And yeah, I got to thank them for the help. My spotter, Brandon Wilkinson, best in the business, spotting me every week. Just got to thank Clint Boyer and Chip and everyone at Clint Boyer Racing who believed in me, who picked me. I haven't had anything to show for it up until the last few weeks, but we got a podium on the dirt side last week. And then to get my career best run here, it feels good to finally show them what I can do. And Gotta thank my Twitch chat, everyone that watches me on Twitch, not only in the Peak stuff or the World of Outlaw stuff, but every week, anything I do in iRacing. They always support me, even when I run 32nd. They're always behind me and believe in me. So, yeah, I just gotta thank everyone who supports me. And yeah, hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Casey Kerwin, everybody, came from deep in the field to finish second and make a huge points haul here tonight. But someone who came from even deeper, Malik Ray, didn't even qualify, rolled off 39th. He finished third, and he stood by with Tim Terry for his efforts.
I've been waiting for this for a long while. Malik Ray, welcome to the top 5 in the Peak Series.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot, seriously.
Let's talk about this race, because you had one of the busiest nights coming from the rear of this field all the way up to position number 3. Let's first talk about that green-white checker finish, because you had the position number 5, your teammate in front of you. He was digging for the win. You got the third. Walk us through that green-white checker.
I had told him under caution that on the start that if he could get a run going into turn 1, I was going to try and push him like no matter what, because I knew that he was my teammate, so I was trying to make sure that at least me or him had a shot at the win. And he had a pretty good run going into. He lifted off because it wasn't going to work out for him. And then he got a really good run going down the back straightaway. And I had a slight chance to take it 3, but I didn't want to dive it in there because I was trying to make sure that, me and him had a shot at it. So I just backed off. And then I was able to hang on to third after I passed Ryan for the next lap and a half. And yeah, that's how it worked out.
You've had an up-and-down season. How relieving is it to get this top 5 finish, especially in the second half of this season going forward? Obviously a little far out of the playoffs, but how relieving is it to finally get this top 5 finish?
Extremely. Like, when I came across the line, I was screaming. I was screaming at the top of my lungs because I was so happy that I got third, especially considering where I came from. I think I came from 38th or 39th because I had a really bad qualifying lap. So to finish third after passing everyone like that helped me out a ton.
So looking at the points picture, you're a little ways out of the playoffs. Looks like you're going to be 16th leaving here this evening. 2 races before that playoff cutoff, but are you looking more at the top 20? Or are we looking for wins? What is your outlook for the remaining races in this 2019 season?
If I have a shot at the win, like how I just did, I'm probably going to be more aggressive if I can. But the goal for me right now is to just the top 20 in points, because I'm trying to keep my my license and whatnot in the series, so that way, because I'm not trying to be in the pro series. So the goal for me is top 20, but if I have a shot at the win, best believe I'm going to take it.
I know you work hard to get up here. Who's on the race car for marketing partners? Who helps the race team get to the virtual racetrack? Who helps you out to get here?
Okay, everyone at Richmond and Pocono Raceway, and then Sim Seats and Dustin Langert and Houston Hammer for the hard work that they put into the cars each and every week, so that I can start in the back and then I can climb my way through all the cars. And you guys for broadcasting, and also my other teammates, Michael Guest and Colin Keister. I appreciate all you guys, because without any of you, I wouldn't be right here with you guys interviewing me. So, but yeah, I appreciate all you guys and your hard work. Thank you.
And we're going to do this again in a couple of weeks at Michigan, right?
Oh, yes, sir. We're going to try to.
Well, there we go. There's Malik Ray. Great to see Malik finally get a top 5 finish. 3rd place run. And Randy, I don't think that's the end we see of him in the top 5 this season, because I know he's got a solid team and a solid car behind him. But speaking about solid teams, how about that 18 team of Bobby Zielinski? I know you've caught up with him finishing 4th.
I think you're right. With Richmond putting themselves 1st and 3rd here today, they might be thinking to expand the racetrack to a 2.5 mile racetrack out there in Virginia, but I think everyone hopes it stays at 3/4 mile. But Bobby Zielinski, that number 18 car, you've just been sort of quietly plucking away all season and solidly still in the top 8 and another top 5 for you. You didn't quite have the pace it seemed like to take a win. Is that how it felt in the 18?
I don't know. Interstate Batteries Camry was really, really good on the long run. We were having those really long runs in the middle of the race, and that caution just, that sucked, because I needed to save a little bit of fuel to make it from lap 45 when I pit under green, and then we had the yellow. So I think we were able to take that if it stayed green, but things change. You got to adapt, and we kind of turned into a lottery to where you just had to hope you were in the right lane every time going into turn 1. And it made it really interesting with those kind of guys on older tires, because only a couple laps on these tires, and it's a big pace disadvantage. So we just tried to survive there at the end. I think there was a version of that where we come out on top, but we just had to have one little thing go right and then be like 2 lanes up on a restart to be where like Casey and Jimmy were. But you know, that's just how it went. Kind of turned into a lottery. I'm sure it was fun to watch. You just didn't know who's gonna win that thing. I didn't know who's gonna win. I didn't know if I would win that thing, just with how crazy it was. So I had fun, and we'll definitely take this 4th.
And you come out of here with the points, 5th in the points, 24 points clear from the top 8 cutoff. And with 2 races left, I think one good result pretty much will lock you in at this point. You have a relatively tame Michigan, and I say relatively tame because the following race is Bristol. But we all know that Michigan, we got a sort of a taste of it at Auto Club, but you guys have figured out a lot more with this package, and I'm sure the racing is going to be a lot crazier and probably a lot more draft heavy. Do you feel at the moment that with 1 race left to go, you might be a championship favorite because in that playoff format, you have a road course in there, and you've really become the road course favorite in this series?
Yeah, I mean, we got to make it there first, obviously. We just got to survive the next 2 races. I think we got the speed every week. I mean, in the first third of the season, I was just having everything go wrong for me, just getting involved in wrecks, and we had good cars then. We just got in some wrecks, and, you know, since Sonoma, we've had everything. Well, not everything's gone our way, but most of the stuff has gone our way in terms of cautions and strategy, and we've, you know, finished 1st, 3rd, 7th, 4th, and pretty good momentum. I think if we could just stay clean the next 2 races, we can make it in. And yeah, I mean, that's the Roval. It's completely different. I'm really hoping we can get it updated on we can get the chicane on the backstretch updated, because I think that'll make racing a ton better and for that Roval. But there's 2 other races in that playoff that I really like at Indy and Darlington. So you know, perfect road. You can win at Darlington and not worry about it. But I'm still going to go for the win at the Roval just because I love road racing, and it'd be awesome to win at a different road course.
Well, thanks for joining us, Bobby, and congratulations on another top 5 for that Joe Gibbs Racing number 18 Interstate Batteries Toyota. Before we let you go, who gets it done besides those names for that number 18?
Well, I gotta give, you know, Joe Gibbs Racing a thanks again. Just finally getting them the results they deserve, and teammate Jake, the 20 car, got 10th. He finally got a top 10. He's been finishing like 11th, 14th all dang year. I'm just super happy he finally got a top 10. And, you know, Interstate Batteries. Virtual Racing School, as always, you can go there for coaching, data packs, learn kind of how to improve your driving, there's setups, tutorials there, everything to make you better as a driver. Got to thank my guys at Coanda as well behind the scenes that really help power the organization. And, you know, Keegan and Chris, unfortunately didn't have great days, but, you know, it wouldn't be able to be done without them for sure. And then thanks, Philip, for spotting me and asking or answering all the questions I ask out there with fuel mileage and crunching the numbers on those big long runs. So got to thank Philip.
So there he was, the 18 of Bobby Zielinski, puts in a solid run and definitely puts himself in as a favorite to at least make the playoffs and potentially a championship favorite as well. And a driver trying to get into that top 8 as well. He puts in a good performance. It's the driver currently 3rd in points, 28 of Garrett Lowe, and he stood by with Tim Terry.
Yeah, I think you have to include this guy as a championship favorite here as he's run this year. But Garrett, let's talk about the early stages of this race, because you were involved in an early caution, then all of a sudden you end up in the top 5. How did you get there and park what you had in those first couple of laps to get to the top 5?
Yeah, we just had to rally tonight. It's just a bad situation down the backstretch. Neither of us were really wanting to give up going into turn 2, and we were just pretty close, and a little mistake on, I think, both of our parts just kind of sent me around and unfortunately collected, I think, Matt Busa. So apologize to him for that, but, you know, we got back in the pack there for a little while and kind of made our way up about halfway. And that caution, we didn't want to see that caution in the middle of that fuel run there. We think we had a pretty good shot at the top 10, but I think it worked out a little bit better as we were able to work those cautions and get up to the top 5.
As Keegan Leahy and Ryan Lewis of the last couple of races has stumbled a little bit, you're consistent. You're 3rd in the point standings. You're about 30 points up on the bubble right now. Heading into these final 2 races, what is your mindset knowing that you have a pretty comfortable cushion on that bubble position in position number 8?
Well, I think the main goal here is we want to try to get a win before the playoffs start, just kind of help us out. But it'd be interesting to see how we run. I know these are 2 very diverse tracks coming up. We got Michigan and Bristol. So Michigan's probably going to be similar to the race you saw today, and I expect Bristol to just be very crazy. So hopefully we won't have to bank on anything going into those last races.
the story of the season has been Ryan Luza, Keegan Leahy. Obviously, Bobby's got a win. Jimmy Mullis now has a win. Nick Ottinger has a win. Zach's got a few wins under his belt. You mentioned that coveted win. How important will that be and going into the playoffs and establishing yourself as a bona fide championship contender for those 4 races?
I think it definitely ranks up there. I think we want to get more consistent finishes like we've been having. That's our #1 priority right now, to continue this championship run if we're going to be able to make the playoffs, as I think we should have a good chance and hopefully make it to Homestead. But the wins are definitely up there. If we have an opportunity where we think we can get one, we're certainly going to go for it.
Beautiful looking 28 car. Who's on this race car for marketing partners and who helps you get to the racetrack?
Thank everybody at Renegades, HyperX, 5-Star Racing, Michael for Spot, and Brian and Trent for crew chiefing tonight. Nick Doucette and this beautiful paint scheme, like you said, and everybody over at the team, Cody Bias, Dylan Duvall, and Justin Bolton for their help every week.
Now, before we let you go, I know on Tuesday night you kind of balance this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series and the Bojangles Summer Shootout. Big week for you next week. What's the outlook for the Legend car?
We're still trying to figure out this new motor, this new engine package we've got. So it's been a lot of work this summer. We've already picked up one top 5 of the, I believe, 4 races we've run. So we'll look to get a couple more next week with the doubleheader. We'll see what happens.
There's Garrett Lowe finishing in position number 5 here this week in the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series, and a big week next week at the quarter mile at Charlotte Motor Speedway. But Evan, it's been a very fun night here at Pocono. We've seen some great racing, some awesome restarts, green-white checker finish, and a guy in Jimmy Mullis going to victory lane. And you look at that top 5. Great to see Casey Kerwin up there. Malik Ray had a huge run. I don't think you can ask for any more. Chris Overland has a top 10 run into this thing. There's a lot of names up there that we really haven't seen all season.
And this kind of goes back to the point that we made at the very start of the night when we talked about how this is a racetrack that had never seen a repeat winner, and we thought, well, it's kind of a unique track. You think somebody would lock it in. Well, the way that the race played out tonight shows you exactly why that is the case. And, you know, your race winner, Jimmy Mullis, another guy who has some real-life racing experience in a Legend car as well. So good example there of the dynamic of the background of a lot of these drivers in this series. Great race tonight, though, but it certainly changed, Randy, inside of those final 20 laps. We thought we had it figured out. We had the 2 strategies. We're pretty confident in which one was going to win out. A caution flag comes out, and you can't give these guys opportunities to go at each other's throats late like that. You saw the numerous attempts at the end there, but it only required 1 green-white checker, just like last week. So 2 weeks in a row, overtime coming into play, and I know Jimmy Mullis is very happy about that added length.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. He's more than happy, I think, with himself that the race went that extra little distance to get him where he was, as we have the top 10 in points on the left-hand side of your screen. And as you can see, Zach Novak, he gets bumped out of the top 8 by 1 point. Nick Ottinger able to just hold on. Christian Challoner down there at 287. He comes out at 10th in the points, and we're only showing the top 10, but 1 point back actually behind Christian is Casey Kerwin, and 2 points behind Casey is Brad Davies. So 10th, 11th, and 12th is tight, and they're not far off the likes of Novak and Ottinger. So with 2 crazy races to go, I know we've been hyping up Bristol as a crazy race, but I think Michigan might be able to outdo it, because there's going to be a lot of slipstreaming there around Michigan. It's going to be a bit of a draft fest, and because of that, it really could be just about anyone's game to pick up the win there. And of course, Bristol's Bristol, baby. It's going to be a crazy race either way. So I mean, they don't really have any more time to hold their breath. I think it's all got to be picture perfect races for here on out if you want to get yourself in the top 8 to fight for that championship. And of course, then after you do that, you can't hold your breath either, because you've only got 4 races to get it done.
Yeah, and if you're not convinced that Michigan's going to be a thriller, go back, watch Eric J. Smith's win from earlier this season into Fontana. You'll get real excited for the race coming up in 2 weeks' time, Tim. But the cut line did change a little bit. I think it's a miracle Nick Ottinger's still P8, but a lot of cars near that bubble had some issues tonight. That single point, though, will bring us into these final 2 weeks of the regular season. Next up, August the 6th from Michigan, Bristol Motor Speedway, and then it gets serious.
Yeah, and I don't think you can count anybody out there. You saw what Novak did, with Novak being in the top 4, and he was on top of that heap of the bubble where anything could have changed up and down, and it definitely did change for Zach Novak in the second half of this race. But you look back, we interviewed Malik Ray. I had a little birdie in my ear saying he's 64 points back. He's still, quote-unquote, mathematically involved in this. And we saw with Zach Novak, anything can happen. Guys like Malik Ray and Corey Vincent, who are 60-something points back, they're going to need some help in 2 races. But definitely not out of the equation if they can get up there and rattle off a couple of top 5 finishes and hope for some help from some other drivers. So this could play into a very neat hand these next 2 weeks. Michigan is going to be great. We saw it at Fontana, unpredictable race, and obviously Bristol, some short track race, and some fenders are going to be flying, and some tempers are going to flare at that one as well. And then you head into the playoffs where anything can happen when we crown this champion this season. But it's going to be intense. I don't think you can really pick up anybody that's going to be locked in to the playoffs. Yeah, Ryan Lewis and Keegan Leahy seem to be the safe bets right now, but all bets are off. 2 weeks, 2 races to lock yourself into the playoffs. I can't wait for it.
You're not going to want to miss those, but with that being said, round number 12 falls into our rear view mirror. As always, want to thank all of the people who make these broadcasts possible. For our director, Hugo Louise, for Alex Horn providing the cameras for us, Andy Werner and Simon Grossman for the broadcast graphics, and for your broadcast team tonight, for myself, Evan Pasoko, for Tim Terry and Rennie Cheneth, want to thank you for tuning in. Remind you, for more information, you can log on to eNASCAR.com. Don't forget, special event this Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It is the eNASCAR iRacing All-Star event live on NBCSN, but you will catch us next in 2 weeks' time on Tuesday, August the 6th for the virtual Michigan International Speedway. That race and every race of the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series can be found right here on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night from